যদি সবাই ফিরে যায়, ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা সবাই ফিরে যায়, যদি গহন পথে যাওয়ার কালে কেউ ফিরে না যায়, তবে পথের কাটা তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে, তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে, যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে। যদি আলো না ধরে, ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা আলো না ধরে, যদি ঝড় বাদলে আধার রাতে দুয়ার দেয় ঘরে, তবে বজ্রানলে আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা চলো রে, আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা চলো রে, যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে। একলা চলো, একলা চলো, একলা চলো, একলা চলো রে।
Hi guys, thank you for joining the live stream. For the third time with us, we have back the Libertarian Party of India, and with their new member Ajay Mallaredi as well. Hi Ajay, hi Tushar.
Hi Niranjan, how are you?
So thanks for coming to the podcast, and like always, we are going to have a bombastic session of live, unplanned questions and answers from people who are the ideologues, founders, and the main people in the party, which is a near impossible task, which I don't think any party in the history of India has ever done. But firstly, Tushar, or Ajay, whoever wants to take the question, we just became the fourth largest economy in the world. How does the Libertarian Party of India see it?
I think it's great that our economy is growing. We believe that growth is important, but we think that India could grow much faster at a much higher rate. We believe a lot of structural barriers. So I think right now we should focus on what we can do to grow it higher rather than just focus about where we are right now or what is the great growth so far. Let's look at the future and see how we can make it much higher.
Right.
Yeah, our base is so low that we can grow at 10-15% easily if we have free market. So
yes,
like Bihar is growing at something around 13 or 15%. So that's not that big of an issue to grow from the low base that we have. We should be satisfied with 7% when we reach somewhere around the 20 trillion mark. But right now we can go full throttle.
Right. And West Bengal is growing at the rate of 10%. Do you think that's high or low?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
West Bengal is growing at the rate of 10%.
Yeah, 10% in comparison to other states is very backwards, and especially in terms of historical trends, like where West Bengal used to stand. So,
right.
What can we say?
What are the structural barriers?
There are basics: regulation, lack of capital access, then low talent base. I mean, plenty of people are there, but not enough world-class talent is there. I would say mostly goes abroad. So these basics make it difficult. And additionally, one thing that is little talked is generational knowledge. I mean to say that generation after generation pass on their experiences to the next generation. So that's missing.
Right. Ajay?
Yeah.
What kind of structural barriers do you see? And
right now we totally fell behind on the whole manufacturing race. I think that was actually a huge problem because our labor laws are very inflexible. Our ability to, even if company wants to acquire land, there are a lot of issues, like even totally in a private sector, the ceiling, there is also classification of land, such as some land cannot be converted from agricultural to commercial. A lot of regulations that you need. In most other countries, that are trying to promote manufacturing, they say single window clearance, and it's actually single window clearance. Today, it is easy for an Indian to actually log on to some website and register an online company in so many countries in the world. But in India, if you do it, it takes a bunch of weeks. And today, actually, and this is something that has started in the last 2 years, even if you're trying to get a GST registration, it's actually quite problematic. It's become really a pain to deal with it. And when people are trying to start companies, I mean, forget about the government supporting it. All we want is don't interfere and create new problems for these companies. A lot of investment from within the country and even from outside would be very happy right now to invest in India, especially after the fact that everybody is really pissed off with China. They want to move companies out of China. So we are in a right position to capture all of that. Unfortunately, the government isn't doing anything to make that happen.
Right. Exactly. An audience member is asking a question which I was about to ask. He's saying, what are labor laws? Are they even necessary? If so, what are the limitations? I was about to ask, what do we do about these labor laws and how? Because in a democracy, you have to appease some people or the other, because after all, it's the crazy of the demo. So how do we get rid of these insane labor laws?
Yes, I mean, right now I think there are probably a bunch of labor laws which are probably more than 100 different acts that are applicable across central and state level. So a fraction of these are central acts, and then the bunch of them that are at the state level. During COVID, we noticed that in Uttar Pradesh, actually, they suspended a few labor laws, saying this is for 3-4 years or something. And I think they didn't go enough. I mean, why suspend it for a couple of years? Might as well just get rid of them. Either a law is useful or it's not useful. If it's not
Exactly.
useful, why do you just
Yeah.
put a limitation of 5 years or something? So
Yeah.
like in India, how difficult it is for a company once you're in the industrial sector to fire anybody, right? So and there is that really famous Bharat Forge case where a person was sleeping in the factory, got multiple repeated warnings. The company fired him. He went to court. That whole case took 25 years to resolve. So for a company to remove an unproductive employee, if you're bogging them in so much litigation, how will they
Yeah.
actually find efficiency? So labor laws, in the fact that there are some labor laws which are required. For example, if the company is promising to pay the worker a certain thing, certain perks or something, and they're not paying those, right? So
Yeah.
those are the issues where the government can protect them. But I believe that those can be dealt with under the ambit of the contract law. Like, for example, any contract between individuals today, if there's a dispute, you go to court. Even labor laws can be done with that. But yes, understand that there are a lot of issues in India, and even the courts are slow. If the government has labor courts specifically to expedite any such disputes where the companies, there are issues where companies fire people and don't pay them the severance which they committed to. These sort of issues can be done, but beyond that, regulating with like 100 different acts, and even also there's a lot of union thuggery involved. So I mean,
Yeah.
I am in favor of voluntary unions. It is absolutely the right of any group of people to come together and form a union. But also, if the company is not able to afford like a certain pay scale, these guys can't just bully the company. Then the company can get cheaper labor, and these guys oppose them and use government laws. So the whole thing is a mess. The Most of the labor laws can absolutely be gotten rid of with no detriment to either the population or the industry. The industry will grow. We really need to start chopping down these laws one by one.
What is the source of the corruption, or the are you saying those the numbers of bad behaviors by those labor laws, or the laborers misusing the unions misusing those labor laws, are they bugs or the features of that system?
I mean, in Indian law, it is very difficult to figure out what is the bug and what is the feature. So, if you are actually trying to stop the company from finding efficiency, right? You are saying a company cannot fire an employee without explaining to the government some reason why they should be able to fire it. That itself is a flaw, because today a company might actually be profitable. Tomorrow, it might be seeing its profits dip. You can't just tell them to keep a bunch of people on the payroll. And also
Yeah.
there are they are also need to respond to market realities around the world. How they have to compete with international firms. How can they do that if we have a bunch of people there and they have absolutely no flexibility in retrenching? Sometimes in some industries, the unions have actually a very specific list of tasks that workers will not do. So even if they want to bring in machinery, sometimes they protest. So with these sort of barriers, how do we see Indian manufacturing grow? And a natural consequence of this is that Indian companies then go and demand the government for some sort of a protection, and then again consumers are getting screwed. And because it becomes an easy capital market for them, they are not investing in R&D to compete with the international companies, and therefore the whole competitiveness of the Indian industry itself is suffering because of this. So it's a chain effect. And yes, government, we have a lot of remnants from the socialist Raj era. So where the companies or the capitalists, are seen as exploiters, greedy people who always want to oppress the worker. So once you have that mindset, then any laws that you frame are saying, this guy is going to oppress. The government will step in and try to protect it. But what's happening is we've totally destroyed the potential for manufacturing. We still have time. We got a nice opportunity because of the whole China thing to capitalize, but we have to do it now. If we miss this, like we are already late, but I think we still have a chance. We should not let go of this opportunity again.
Right. तुषार, अब थोड़ा हिंदी में भी करते हैं. या go on.
Like in India,
थोड़ी देर हिंदी में करते हैं.
हाँ, तो मतलब लॉज ऑन पेपर होते हैं इंडिया में और अप्लाई नहीं होते, तो इतनी कोई ज्यादा बड़ी बात नहीं है. सारी बात ये है कि एनफोर्समेंट कितनी स्ट्रिक्ट है. जैसे कि एक तरफ केरला है जहाँ पे एनफोर्समेंट स्ट्रिक्ट है, और एक तरफ तमिलनाडु है जहाँ पे एनफोर्समेंट इतनी स्ट्रिक्ट नहीं है. तो फिर एक इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन में थोड़ा बूम कर रहा है. मतलब केरला, मतलब कि तमिलनाडु अब पाकिस्तान से आगे निकल गया पर उसमें जीडीपी आउटपुट में, और एक तरफ केरला है जो कि अपना स्टैग्नेंट ही है. तो मतलब काफी सारे तरीके हैं प्रॉब्लम को एड्रेस करने के, मगर एक सिंपल यही है कि आप यू सिंपली इग्नोर द लॉ.
हाँ, और अगर एक तो है कि सोशलिस्ट राज का एक थिंकिंग है कि हाँ, मतलब अमीर है इसलिए वो बंदा खराब आदमी ही है. ये प्रेमिस लेके, ये असम्पशन लेके सब लॉ शुरू होते हैं, सब फैक्ट्रियों को परमिशन, लाइसेंस, आशीर्वाद दिया जाता है उसमें. और ये हमारा डीईआई माइंडसेट का भी कितना यहाँ पे इम्पैक्ट है कि नहीं, तुम यहाँ के लोकल हो या फिर तुम्हारा कुछ पॉलिटिकल कनेक्शन है, तुम्हारे पीछे 200 गुंडे खड़े हैं, इसलिए हम तुमको फायर नहीं कर सकते.
अब ये ना सारी उसकी बात हो जाती है जब जीरो सम गेम्स हो जाते हैं कि भाई किस पास कितनी ज्यादा मसल पावर और कौन किसको अपना who can submit the other to his will, वो वाली बात आ जाती है. तो जब रूल्स क्लियर नहीं होते तो फिर गेम सारी पावर वाली बन जाती है.
राइट. अजय, what are your thoughts on the rising income inequality in India? How do we deal with that?
Rising income inequality is actually technically not a problem, because what we need to focus is, are the poor becoming richer? Is their livelihood improving? For example, if Bill Gates suddenly moves into my neighborhood, the income inequality has increased by a lot, but that doesn't mean anything has changed in my quality of life. So one of the things that has happened because of the whole socialist raj of the last, 5 or even I would say 7 decades right now, is that a lot of small businesses, small entrepreneurs have not been able to get the sort of income and wealth mobility, because all the wealth has been actually captured by a crony class. And these crony class, I mean, whether it be the Tatas or whether it be the Ambanis or Adanis, these are the guys who have this huge advantage. Today, the government is actually changing industrial policy to benefit them. They will change the import customs duties to benefit them. So if Ambani today is making some raw material, then obviously there will be a tariff on that raw material. If it is at a finished good and he needs raw material from outside, those rates will go down. So these laws are skewed to benefit a few industrialists and cronies. And this is not the capitalism. And as the Libertarian Party of India, we are for free market capitalism, not this cronyism that has been carried on for the last few decades. And also, just to add on to the fact about the whole industrial labor laws, today, if anybody wants to start a small factory, the compliance burden is absolutely going to kill them. But if a Tata wants to set up another plant, because they have so much money available, they can easily have one compliance department to handle that. It's not a problem for them. So you are also stifling the young and the dynamic entrepreneurs of this country, who I believe, if you actually see, they're coming up with such amazing ideas in tech, everything from drones. There's so many startups, and I feel bad that these people are not able to grow, and all the contracts and everything are skewed to make a few bunch of industrialists richer. Yes, so if the inequality is growing because of that aspect, that the wealth from the poor, because we are paying GST, everybody pays GST. Now, if a poor guy is paying GST on the fuel that he consumes, and some of that goes to give some subsidy for an industrialist, or rather an incentive for them, so that is wrong. So we believe everybody should compete, and a level playing field for everybody across all socioeconomic sectors.
Right. Ajay, would you admit that cronies are at the end always inevitable, because we always see, no matter what the country, what the example, we always see some specific business houses friendly with the head of the state. Now, shouldn't we just focus on then that, earlier on, even in the poorest of socialist countries, someone or the other is always the crony and is cozying up with the head of the state, versus now we are better off, and even now we have cronyism. So is that really a problem in itself?
So if you look at it, yes, cronyism exists, but we have to look at the reason why cronyism exists. Now, today, if Tata has if the government has the power to take away land from the farmers, then obviously Tata will go. If not Tata will go, some other rich guy will go. Maybe Elon Musk will come tomorrow from US and he'll say, give me the land. I want that farmer's land. Now, in a fair system where you respect the property rights, they would have to go to the farmer and tell him, listen, I want your land. And he'll say, I won't sell. And you have to keep hiking up the price and negotiate with him. In that way, the farmer gets the good price. Now, what is happening in India, and what happened in West Bengal during the whole Singur thing, the land was acquired by force by the government, because suddenly the government decided that we want some plant there. And obviously they started protesting. And I don't think the farmers did anything wrong there. It is their land. Why should their land be stolen away? If you want their land, you have to pay the fair price. Now, as long as the government has the ability to control your industrial policy, to control who can take the ability to take away land, this cronyism will always exist. And if not, and it is not just about some rich capitalists doing it. Today, even in many countries, these unions get together and tell the government that don't pass this policy because it benefits us. So the government
in USA
has
itself.
So even in the US right now, there is a port, and all the union workers are opposing automated machinery that will improve productivity, because the union workers are worried that some of their jobs will be lost. Now, the contrast with China is they have like these huge ports and there's so much automation. And in the US right now, these union guys are creating issue. So whether it be the unions, whether it be rich capitalists, special groups of interest will always capture the government. The only solution to this is reduce the power of the government. If the government doesn't have a problem, doesn't have the ability to steal land from a farmer or even you or anybody, then they can't give special favors to anybody. And that is how we propose that the government be kept in check from capture by any vested interest, be it the unions or the capitalists or cronies.
There's another argument in
go on to fake issue है जो असली इशू वो तो लैक ऑफ सोशल मोबिलिटी है. जैसे अब ये बात करते हैं कि 1% होल्डिंग दिस मच ऑफ वेल्थ, वो तो उस प्रॉब्लम ये है कि अगर 1% की कॉम्पोजिशन चेंज नहीं हो रही है, क्योंकि जनरेशन वेल्थ डजंट स्टे जनरेशन आफ्टर जनरेशन. जैसे यूएसए का एग्जांपल है, वो कहते हैं कि भाई 1% होल्ड्स 30-40% ऑफ द वेल्थ और समथिंग, तो उसकी कॉम्पोजिशन चेंज होती रहती है. और लाइफ, जैसे थॉमस होल ने बताया था कि डिफरेंट लाइफ, आप लाइफ के जो डिफरेंट फेजेस में होते हैं, जैसे आप 40s-50s में होते हो, देन यू आर रिचर एज कंपेयर टू व्हेन यू आर यंगर. तो कॉम्पोजिशन आप लाइफ में कभी कभार मतलब आप 1% में जाते हो और उसके बाद फिर नीचे आ जाते हो. अब जैसे अब मान लो हिस्टोरिकली बात करें, रॉकफेलर्स हो गए, कार्नेगीज हो गए, वो कहाँ है? मॉर्गन्स हो गए, वो कहाँ है? मतलब हाँ, उनकी मतलब कंपनीज वगैरह है, मगर उनके एयर्स कहाँ हैं? अब तो टॉप रैंकिंग अलग है. ऐसी अब यूएसए की मतलब कंपेयर करते जाओ, मतलब हिस्टोरिकली कंपेयर करते जाओ, भाई टॉप 100 की लिस्ट में कौन है. कॉम्पोजिशन चेंज होती रहती है. इलॉन मस्क तो 20 इयर्स पहले था भी नहीं लिस्ट में, और वो टॉप पे है. तो इंडिया में प्रॉब्लम ये है कि वही नाम बार बार टॉप ऑफ द लिस्ट आते रहते हैं, क्योंकि यहाँ पे क्रोनिज्म का प्रेवेलेंस है. यहाँ पे कैपिटल इतनी ज्यादा इन्वॉल्व होती है मशीनरी से, मतलब की मशीनरी से परमिशन लेने में, कि आप की छोटा प्लेयर सोच ही नहीं सकता कि मैं 0 से स्टार्ट करूंगा और फिर उसके बाद आई विल राइज टू द टॉप. हाँ, मतलब एक्सेप्शंस निकल के आती रहेंगी, फिर भी बहुत ज्यादा एनर्जी और कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर होता है इफ यू हैव टू राइज टू द टॉप. नॉर्मल फ्री, मतलब रिलेटिवली फ्री मार्केट सिस्टम के मुकाबले. और तभी हम ये प्रमोट करते हैं कि गवर्नमेंट के पास कैपिटल, मतलब रिसोर्स एलोकेशन की अथॉरिटी नहीं होनी चाहिए, क्योंकि नेचुरली इट मींस कि पॉलिटिशियन की जजमेंट की बेसिस पे एलोकेट होगा कि आई विल फेवर हिम और द अदर.
नेशनल इंटरेस्ट के लिए भी क्या क्रोनिज्म थोड़ा इनेविटेबल है कि कुछ चीजें अगर स्टेट नहीं कर सकता है मगर किसी देश में करवाना है, तो अगर अपने फ्रेंड वाला कोई बिजनेसमैन हो तो उसको बोल के कुछ नेशनल इंटरेस्ट में भी करवाया जा सकता है? क्या उस वजह से क्रोनिज्म फेयर बन जाता है और या फिर जस्टिफाइड हो जाता है?
अब शॉर्ट टर्म मेजर है ना. जैसे साउथ कोरिया एग्जांपल है. साउथ कोरिया अल्ट्रा क्रोनी कंट्री है. हाँ ठीक है, मतलब सैमसंग, एलजी, हिंडे वगैरह सारी कंपनीज ठीक है, रिलेटिवली गुड है, मगर अब उनकी सोसाइटी कोलैप्स कर रही है. 0.6 बर्थ रेट आ गया है. उस मतलब हम वो उनका इनइक्वालिटी कम है फिर भी दूसरी कंट्रीज के मुकाबले, मगर फिर भी मतलब एक फेल्ड सोसाइटी की तरफ ही बढ़ता जा रहा है साउथ कोरिया, रिच होने के बावजूद. तो हाँ ठीक है, मतलब 1-2 जनरेशन तक सस्टेन कर सकती है चीज, मगर उसके बाद इवेंचुअली इफ यू डोंट हैव डिसरप्टर्स जो कि क्रिएटिव डिस्ट्रक्शन करते रहे और लगातार कीप एक्सपेंडिंग द पाई, तो आपकी सस्टेनेबल नहीं होता. तभी यूएसए को
यहाँ पे एक मिनट तुषार, तुम्हें थोड़ा और डेप्थ में घुसना पड़ेगा कि क्योंकि कुछ लोगों को अभी लगेगा कि हम क्रोनिज्म की बात कर रहे थे, यहाँ से फर्टिलिटी रेट कहाँ से आ गया, वो थोड़ा एग्जांपल वो थोड़ा एक्सप्लेन कर दो पहले।
वो इस तरीके से आ गया कि रिसोर्स एलोकेशन फिर से कॉन्सेंट्रेट होगी उनके उस पे, एक लिमिटेड नंबर ऑफ इंडिविजुअल्स पे। फिर अब उनकी प्रेफरेंसेस डिटरमिन करेंगे कि ओवरऑल सोसाइटी की डायरेक्शन क्या होगी। तो इस वजह से फिर अपना आप ह्यूमन मतलब लोग इंडिविजुअल्स ऑप्टिमाइज करना शुरू कर देते हैं कि भाई हाउ डू वी विन द गेम। तो अब जैसे यहाँ पे उसके लिए कंपटीशन होता है, ब्यूरोक्रेसी के लिए कंपटीशन होता है, वैसे ही वहाँ पे उसके लिए कंपटीशन होता है कि सैमसंग में आप सिलेक्ट हो रहे हो या फिर आप Hyundai में सिलेक्ट हो रहे हो। तो सारी गेम ही वो में जाती है। और सिंस यू एंड अप वर्किंग, मतलब कि कंपटीशन बहुत ज्यादा है क्योंकि आउटलेट्स बहुत कम है। जैसे मतलब हमारे पास तो प्राइवेट और पब्लिक का ऑप्शन है, मगर उनके पास जो प्राइवेट का ऑप्शन है वो सिर्फ कुछ लिमिटेड कंपनीज ही है, उसके अलावा तो फिर कुछ सोशल स्टैंडिंग ही नहीं है आपकी। तो क्या होता है कि पीपल वर्क फॉर रियली लॉन्ग, मतलब कि काफी लंबे टाइम तक दे डोंट गेट मैरिड और दे वर्क रियली हार्ड टू अटेन सम स्टेटस, और फिर इट लीड्स टू डिले इन कंसेप्शन। और फिर उस वजह से फिर इवेंचुअली पेरेंट्स डिसाइड कि हमें तो बच्चा करना ही नहीं, या फिर एक या दो पेड़ हो जाते हैं। तो बस फिर जब ये रिपीट होता रहता है जनरेशन आफ्टर जनरेशन, तो you have a 0.6 birth rate, or even after spending $250 billion to revive the fertility rate, you can't do anything.
Right.
I just want to add one small point here. So, I mean, when we spoke about cronyism and national interest, I think if, for example, the government is favoring a couple of few specific defense contractors and country, we are also not looking hard enough at so much smaller companies that probably can come up with a lot of innovation. We already have, I think, companies like Skyroot that are actually trying to, launch smaller satellites into space. So a lot of these startups and entrepreneurs and, even really smart people who are sometimes forming smaller companies might actually not be able to capitalize on the opportunity to produce better products for the country. And even from a national defense, I think we need to actually be open to a very competitive markets, landscape.
अब जैसे यूएस मतलब डिफेंस इंडस्ट्री में एग्जांपल लें तो एंड्रिल नाम से एक कंपनी आई अभी रिसेंटली, उसने पार्मर लुक के नाम से एंटरप्रेन्योर शुरू करी है। ही गॉट इनटू डिफेंस ड्रोन टेक एंड थिंग्स लाइक दैट। और जैसे फिर पीटर थील की कंपनी है पैलेंटीर, वो भी इसमें इन्वॉल्व है, मतलब इंटेलिजेंस में। तो यहाँ पे जब आप क्रोनिज्म में चले जाते हो फिर आपको वो नहीं रहता ना, मार्केट इंसेंटिव नहीं रहता, और छोटे छोटे इनोवेटर्स के पास चांस नहीं होता एक्सपेरिमेंट करने का और उसके बाद पार्टिसिपेट इन द सिस्टम का। तो कॉन्स्टेंटली यू आर लैगिंग बिहाइंड एंड इनोवेशन कैच अप नहीं कर पाती।
राइट। अजय,
हमारे इंडिया एक और बात, मतलब कि इंडिया में जो मेजर प्रॉब्लम है, जैसे कनेक्टेड प्रॉब्लम्स ही हैं इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन वाली, कि प्रोटोटाइपिंग में कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। यहाँ पे आप आईआईटी के न्यूज रोज आती रहती है, आईआईटी वालों ने ये प्रोटोटाइप बनाया, आईआईटी वालों ने वो प्रोटोटाइप बनाया, या फिर किसी और कॉलेज ने VIT ने प्रोटोटाइप बनाया, मगर उसके बाद जब उसको मास स्केल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग की बारी आती है तो कुछ नहीं हो पाता। पहली बात तो आपको इतना कैपिटल नहीं मिल पाता, और उसके बाद फिर कैपिटल मिल जाता है आपको इतनी स्किल्ड वर्कफोर्स नहीं होता कि आप उसको सक्सेसफुली एम्प्लॉय कर सको, और उसके बाद फिर यूनियन से लड़ाई, वो वाली चीज। तो मतलब ये सारी चीज वो मॉथबॉल प्रॉब्लम्स है ना, तो ये सारी जुड़ के क्लॉग कर देती है हमारे सिस्टम को। और जो हाँ ठीक है, अच्छी बात, हमने 4 ट्रिलियन अटेन कर लिया, मगर ये इन स्पाइट ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट है, नॉट बिकॉज ऑफ इट है।
नॉट बिकॉज यस। Now, someone is asking, you will have to answer this at some point anyway. I don't think we should be trying to fit Western concepts into our framework, as the society is quite different. Are these Western concepts, Ajay?
I mean, I don't think that,
free markets.
No, I don't think free market. We had a long history of trade in this country. I mean, Indian goods were being exported everywhere to the world. And we are talking about like even 2000, more than 2000 years ago. There was a point of time where in Rome, they were considering banning of imports from India because all the gold from Rome, because India, we had limited gold mining. Lot of gold from the Europe everywhere was coming to India because our products were amazing. Like, our goods were so much in demand, whether it, and of course there was an agriculture, but handicraft, so many things, right? And all these traders were going everywhere, trading it. And I don't think that this concept of liberty is, I mean, it is framed now in the Western thing because I believe also, because of whatever historic events that have happened, our way of thinking has changed. But historically, yes, we had a lot of freedom and liberty. And even if you look at it, the way when kings were ruling it, it was not like all the time that the kings would say that all this land is ours and we have absolute control of everything, right? So their administrative power was also very limited. So the amount of the sort of an administrative states that we are seeing are a much later invention, even within Indian civilization. So I don't see this free market as a Western philosophy. In fact, even in China, we had so many very libertarian thinkers from I would say the Orient probably, or Asia probably, had libertarian elements much prior to any sort of thought that emerged in Western civilization. But a good idea is a good idea. Why do we have to focus on where it came from? We benefit from it. We have seen the benefits from it. So I think we should just adopt it.
Yeah.
और हम भूल रहे हैं कि हमारी history of merchant guilds.
Yeah. Now, talking about China, some people obviously from time to time really almost give fellatio to China. So why can't we have China like dictatorship and have our way with prosperity and all the fun that China is having?
No, absolutely. So one of this common myth about China, and also I mean I don't want to sound condescending, but it's usually very low IQ thinkers that keep saying that China is amazing and China grew because of authoritarianism. We had Maoist China, right? And Maoist China was peak authoritarianism. So why didn't China grow then? If it was the authoritarian tendencies of China that made China a success, why did that not happen during Mao? It's after Mao, when Deng Xiaoping, he started reforms and started shifting to a market economy slightly. I mean, not even completely, but just he relaxed it. And with the growth of SEZ, that is what actually made China prosperous. So instead of focusing on, no country in the world today is an absolute free market, nor is any country absolutely communist, maybe with the exception of something like North Korea, right? So most countries in the world are mixed economies. So we have to see when a country is doing well in a certain area, we have to examine it. Why is that sector doing well? Is it because the government is controlling everything, or is it because private actors have greater freedom to do things that they want? And if you look at it even from a labor law point of view, Chinese labor laws are much relaxed compared to India, and China has started doing all these massive SEZs where the regulation was actually pretty low and they had a lot of autonomy, and that is how they actually grew. So we are not, instead of focusing on their deregulatory part, these guys just want to push their agenda that we need authoritarianism, we need to curb freedom of speech, we need to do this. US doesn't curb freedom of speech. Does it mean US economy is not so great or it's not doing well? So these are really bad lessons by some really stupid people that are being projected on the internet. And unfortunately, a lot of people with lack of critical thinking just lap it up. It is free market and property rights that really help countries and economies grow. You cannot stifle them. And maybe in some fringe case, there will be some sort of a dictator guy who will pass a few laws, and that country might prosper in the short term. But the chances of that are like so low that sometimes it's just 1 in 100. And we are saying just because of that fringe case, we should follow that model. That's absolutely not the sensible thing to do.
Right.
और जो ज्यादा चाइना को लेके ज्यादा खुश है, वो वहां पे जाके देखे, आपको पता चलेगा कि they are more capitalist than ours. And एक सिंपल सी स्टोरी सुनाता हूँ. Some Canadian went to China for manufacturing endeavor. तो वहां पे क्या है कि people from the municipality come every week and ask कि आपको कोई प्रॉब्लम तो नहीं है, कैसा चल रहा है आपका बिजनेस, ये सब वो सब. तो one time he complained के एयरपोर्ट से आने में एयरपोर्ट से फैक्ट्री तक आने में बहुत सारी रेड लाइट्स आती हैं. Can you do something about it? नेक्स्ट डे लाइटें उतरना शुरू हो गई. आप सोच सकते हो कि इंडिया में ऐसा कुछ हो रहा है या किसी भी और कंट्री में ऐसा कुछ हो रहा है.
Now, Ajay said that their workers' rights are also pretty laxed. Are there sweatshops or not today? Are they having a nice life?
I mean, so let's call what is the sweatshop? Basically, we are talking about places where the wages are very low, and it's usually the international media that just calls it a sweatshop. But these are workers who, if that company had not existed, they would not even be making that money, or it's much lower. Now there are instances in China where they have actually captured a bunch of population and treat them like slaves, as they treat them in the with the Uyghurs. That is absolutely a human rights violation, and it is sort of similar
Yeah.
to the sort of slavery that America had. But if you
Yeah.
take that out, people in China are willing to work longer hours because the labor laws don't restrict them from doing so. Of course, even China
Right.
over a period of time has started, doing some changes to that. But these people's livelihoods are improving now. When these international companies go to China, they go there because the cost of production is lower, and these people before they had no money, and now they're actually earning a wage. So sweatshop is a very
Yeah.
elitist word to use,
Right.
and
Yes.
we should just look at them as low cost labor. I mean, there's nothing
Exactly.
really wrong about it.
Now,
वही मतलब आप
yeah, go
what
on.
what trade off are you choosing to have? Do you want कि आप चाहते हो कि भुखमरी हो?
Right. Now, on temple freedom, guys, you all are in favor of temple freedom. Why? Shouldn't the
Absolutely.
government collect taxes from the temples?
No, because why? Why should the government be involved in religion? And if you look at it from the time we have gotten independence, the government is treating temples as its own private kitty, right? So whenever it wants, it takes them, takes away all the funds and starts spending them however you want. Now, see, I personally am not religious, but imagine if you are a religious person, would you like it if the money that you have donated to your god or your religion is gone and used to fund some other subsidy somewhere else? Because all of this goes into the tax pool. Now we assume, like, this is the legitimate grouse of many Hindus, and that we are paying, the temple money is being taken away, and the government is then giving hard subsidies or something like that. Then it obviously upsets them a lot. And I absolutely see no case. And it is very unfortunate that I think today I saw a notification that came out that in Uttar Pradesh, the government is taking over yet another temple, saying that temples are not being managed. So, and the thing is, because it's in Uttar Pradesh, because it's BJP government, most of these guys will not talk about anything tomorrow. But Uttar Pradesh will not be under BJP for like 100 years. Tomorrow, Congress will come and it will start taking all the money from temples, and it will start funding whichever. It will fund madrasas, it will fund churches, it can do whatever it wants. Now, the question is, why should the government be involved in religion? We oppose this. This is a This is a crime. We want real secularism where the government has nothing to do with any religion, be it Islam, be it Christianity, Jain, Sikhism. The government we believe it should focus on the very basics, take care of the defense, or, basic courts, minimal police, and things like this. Government running temples, is that the job of the government? Is that, even if you ask anybody, why are you electing whether Modi or Yogi, nobody will say, I want Modi to be elected so he can run the temple. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it's been so normalized that people are not talking about it. And the parties today, when BJP says, we want to fight for this, what have they done? It's been more than like 10 years now. It's an open challenge. What has the BJP government done to free Hindu temples? This is a very core plank of us, and we say Hindu temples because right now temples are the only religious institutions under control by the Indian government. But the same applies for any religious institution. If the Indian government wants to take over all the churches in the country, we'd be opposed to that also. Right now, Hindu temples are in control. We have to free them. And this is a very high priority issue because it is creating a lot of strife in the country. It is also polarizing people because people are now thinking in terms of this religion versus that religion. And when, say, the government is favoring one religion over the other, when the government is sort of like having a very negative treatment for Hindu institutions, then obviously people will be angry and upset. And the best way to diffuse this is get rid of it. The government is not even able to do the things like roads properly. What business does it have in temples? So absolutely, freeing Hindu temples is a core plank of the Libertarian Party.
Now, why do you exactly endorse temple freedom? Is it just as from the economic perspective as a libertarian, or do you see some positive impact in society on the whole as well?
Absolutely. I think that, historically, a lot of religious institutions have been involved in charity, in sort of, supporting their communities. We know that, for example, even in the Jains, they have these trusts where they actually gather funds and they lend them out to people. So I think even Hindu institutions, if you look at it, a lot of kings or whoever, a lot of people have donated to this, and they would want better say over how these funds are used. Now, tomorrow they'll say that, people of our community or, our religion are not being taken care of, or, we are not able to offer some sort of a benefits where, people are leaving our religion and going. Now, how are these people going to fund those if the temple trusts or bodies don't have the freedom to utilize funds in a way that benefits their religion? So one, it is an individual freedom thing. It's from an economic point of view, from a morality point of view also. The government taking away money from a religious institutions is absolutely, it's horrible.
Now, there is one criticism of temple freedom from the left wing, and there is one criticism of the temple freedom movement from the right wing as well. I'll ask you both of them. So the left wing criticism is that what if those evil Brahmin priests do some shenanigans and steal all the money? Then why shouldn't the government make sure they don't steal all the money?
Okay, the thing is, now we've always had, so before till independence happened, why didn't all these people steal away all the funds, right? And if you see that, no, suddenly what happened that only after 1950 or whenever the government took over temples, all these whoever Brahmins or whoever are controlling the temple suddenly became evil. And once the constitution was formed, their DNA changed, their morality changed, everything changed. We've become an evil country and we can't trust them. For hundreds of years. So that temple in Kerala, right? So, and it was only because there was a court dispute where they said that, let's open up the vaults and check. They found an insane amount of gold there. Now, why didn't all these people steal it over, right? So people, especially religious people, I mean, of course, there will be, even in the government, people are stealing money. There will be a few people here and there, but at least the devotees would know that if, this temple people are stealing it, they would protest against it. And they would say, okay, we're not going to support this temple. So even every religion also has to compete for their, devotees, right? So if you know that some temple is just stealing money, stealing funds, people will not donate to those temples. And the other thing is, let those temple trusts and those devotees, all of them, deal with this. If you are a leftist, first of all, you're anyway against religion and all. Why do you care? It's not your money, right? And the people who are donating to the temples are not going to be the leftists or the communists. It's the Hindus or religious people.
But
So let those people get together and figure out what their problem is. It is not for the leftists or anybody else to worry about whether these people are stealing money or what. Let the people who are, who are invested into that figure that out. So that is one thing. And obviously, what is the criticism from the right-wing part? I mean,
that casteism will come back.
Casteism is already there, right? So casteism is already there. But now tell me, if you go to the Tirupati temple, do they ask you for your caste? It might happen in some rural remote temple which is controlled by some local guy where these sort of things happen. But any of the major temples, none of them ask for caste. They ask for religion because they're a religious institution. I have not heard about any of these major temples do it. And also today, Hindu society also, there has to be reform. And this reform is only going to come from within Hindu society. Somebody from outside cannot impose it. There are reformers from the Hindu societies who said that, casteism is wrong. Even RSS and these Mahasabha guys have always been saying that, this caste is a huge problem and this will lead to people leaving the religion. So today, if people are shifting to other religion because of caste issue, then Hindus also have to reform these sort of regressive practices. And if somebody is practicing it, they have to go as a community and shame the people responsible, saying that, see, social change has to come. Any meaningful reform in the country cannot happen from a government rule. Okay, government has anyway abolished the caste system, untouchability, all that happened 70 years ago, right? So if you are saying that today there is casteism that exists, so why hasn't it's illegal, right? Why is it still happening? True change can only come from society, and Hindu institutions will also have to compete for the attention of the Hindu devotees, many of them who will leave or patronize other temples which are not castes. So I think that way it is a market driven, social driven change that will change attitudes. So I don't really see, and of course, if the right wing is saying anything about controlling temples, I'm seriously gonna distrust their motives. They just want their favorite party to run the temple. And it's if you really are a Hindu and you really care about your religion, you don't want government to be anywhere near your temples. Great. Look at the great state of our urban infrastructure, how bad it is. You think these guys are gonna run temples which have existed for like hundreds and some thousands of years? Absolutely not. The people in the trust, the people who are really invested their time and effort and devotion to those, they are the ones who can better take care of this.
Right. Now, yeah, go on, Tushar.
Yeah, leftists themselves are thieves, so they will be interested in theft by others.
They just want the temple money to fund some random welfare schemes, or
Yeah, just looking
Now,
for sources of theft.
one of the recurring themes of this channel has been to explain to people that libertarianism, free markets, and Hindu unity are the only two things that can solve casteism. Now, the Hindu unity part, caste identity is breaking down or not being that important, at least caste-based bad behavior going away, gets into the heads of all the Hindutva people who are interested in Hindu unity and stuff. But how does a free market get rid the society of casteism? That most people don't understand. Most Hindutvadis don't understand. Could you, any of you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it today, where are we actually seeing casteism? Casteism mostly, I mean, I'm not saying that it has vanished in today's cities, but there was a point of time where, if you're in a village, or even today you read that in government schools, they'll say that this person belongs to so and so caste. So this guy has to, cannot cook the food or cannot be in a certain place. But in cities today, you even see establishments which say that you're not allowed in because of your caste or anything. Like, if you go to a street side vendor and eat pani puri, does anybody ask what caste are you? So the whole urbanization that the country has gone through and a very modern economy, a lot of people don't really care about this. It does exist within close circles, but even that is changing today. In fact, like, I think we had this thing at the Libertarian meetup. It's a slightly funny incident, but there was one of a Libertarian who showed up, and he was telling us about this girl he dated, and she was belonging to a certain community in Gujarat. And then after a few days, the girl said, "You know what? It's not going to really work out between us because you are from a different community and I am from a different community." And that can be mitigated if your net worth is at least like 1.5 or 2x of what ours is. So today the real class is shifting from a very cash based to a economic based things. Like, you see that in cities today, people marry outside caste lines, and you actually see that more among like the more well off ones, because they're looking at it in a very sort of a business or a networking things. And also cities are very more cash neutral. You don't see people asking at restaurants or any business, nobody literally asks you what your caste is. The only time people really want to know what your caste is in schools and all, because there's all sort of some reservations or things like that, where you would have a caste certificate that you have to show to for some special benefits. So it is the government that is actually perpetuating this institution. Left to a market in a modern capitalist free market economy, over time it will not vanish. I'm not saying cities don't have any casteism or people in groups don't have it, but it is dying down. And the fact that today cities have less than rural environment shows that with economic progress and capitalism, you will automatically see a downswing in this.
Right. Yeah, Tushar is muted.
Tushar, you're muted.
Yeah, तभी हम promote करते रहते हैं कि industrialization and urbanization are the solution to casteism, and Japan is the best example that we have. A caste based society जो कि अब मतलब बात भी नहीं होती कि वहाँ पे casteism था पहले.
Now, there is one interesting similarity today between Bengaluru and Kolkata. Amongst all the things that they could have been in similar in, they have decided to have a similarity in language politics. Both of these cities have some groups of language politicians, and in Bengaluru, how relevant are they? In Kolkata, I know they are beginning to get relevant. In Bengaluru, how relevant are they?
Absolutely. Bangalore has, see, the thing is, the number of people who are doing this are very small. It is like, because I have lived in Bangalore for a very long time and I don't speak Kannada. My language learning skills are very bad. I manage with English, and that never really was a problem for me. There are incidents that happen, and there are like politically vested groups that try to amplify this. And you know how it works. Once you start blaming outsiders for changing your culture or some random big things, it is easy to whip up some sort of a political support. See, Bangalore today is like a very cosmopolitan city. You have people from everywhere. In fact, they did a survey of the number of languages spoken in each city, and Bangalore had the highest, which is a wonderful indicator. I mean, I think Bangalore sort of reflects the true diversity of this country, in a fact that you have people from northeast, northwest, east, west. Everybody is there in Bangalore. They're all doing their own, minding their own business, till some political groups start whipping this up. I'm not familiar about West Bengal. I'm actually surprised, because I thought Bengalis usually are not into so much into language politics. But these sort of movements, nativist movements, are very harmful for the economic integration of this country. Today, if you look at it in India, the labor market is very fragmented. The migration patterns, if you look at it in India, most people only migrate within the state, not from one state to another. If you compare it with any other country which is under a common political unit, you see a lot of migration from one region to other. Today, it doesn't happen. And this is also hampering the sort of productivity in this country, because you want the best talent to flow. If the best talent is there in Gujarat, you want them all the way in Tamil Nadu. You don't want them, or vice versa. So you don't want people to be stuck there because they feel that we are not welcome in another place. So these are also social aspects that we should focus on individually and as a community, to make sure that these sort of sentiments don't crop up, and if they do, they're quickly nipped in the bud, because this can hurt economic growth of the country as well.
और पहली डेटा रिलीज हुआ था कि स्टेट गवर्नमेंट किस लैंग्वेज के प्रमोशन के लिए कितना वो कर रही है, फंड एलोकेट कर रही है, तो उसमें कर्नाटका में हाईएस्ट रैंकिंग उर्दू की थी। उर्दू को 100 करोड़ बजट एलोकेट हुआ है और कन्नड़ को सिर्फ 30 करोड़। So
when you have the government allocating funds, so obviously again there's going to be dispute, because they're going to complain one language getting preference over the other. And I think today the language, a lot of people don't, I mean, this when people usually, especially when it comes to Hindi, a lot of people don't realize that the reason why Hindi is so popular across the country is not because the government imposed it. It does, but one, there is network effects, because Hindi speaking population, I mean, forget all the dialects, it doesn't really matter because they can understand each other, right? So when you say Hindi speakers, there's so many, and they keep going everywhere around the country. The business communities have a lot of business communities from the north. They come, they speak Hindi. And the most important thing is Bollywood. Whether you like Bollywood and the content they produce, the cultural influence of Bollywood is so high that, people just watch Hindi movies, listen to Hindi songs, and in that way also pick up a lot of that. So it's not always that the government is imposing it. Yes, but the government has had some problematic policies. So the government is seen as pushing one language or insisting. So if the government doesn't push it, naturally, the natural evolution is going to be Hindi, and in the future, it's going to be English. So this is how network effects work. But by creating all these sort of political issues around allotment of funds, there are mistakes obviously by the central government, and then state governments catch on to it, amplify this issue. A lot of strife and confusion.
और एक और एस्पेक्ट ज्यादा हाईलाइट करना चाहूंगा मैं इसमें कि ये जो लैंग्वेज शोविनिस्ट बने घूमते हैं, दे आरंट इंटरेस्टेड इन, अभी जैसे एक कन्नड़ राइट ऑथर को ही बुकर प्राइज मिला है, हाउ मच आर दे प्रमोटिंग इट, हाउ मच आर दे प्रमोटिंग कि देखो ये हमारी ऑथर है, इनने कन्नड़ में ही लिखा था और इनको वो मिला है, या फिर हम अपने कन्नड़ मूवीज को प्रमोट कर रहे हैं. मतलब दे आरंट इनवाइटिंग, बट दे आर टिपिंग पीपल ऑफ के अगर तुम हमारे साथ नहीं तो तुम हमारे खिलाफ हो. मतलब they are chastising people for not being part of not speaking Kannada. So that is not how you attract people to your culture.
Very good point. This incident actually happened. There was this person who basically is some Kannada writer or something. He's traveled everywhere around the world promoting the language, and then his car, I think maybe he was another state, the car plate was actually written in Hindi or something, and in Bangalore or somewhere in Karnataka, this guy got stopped and harassed. Now imagine this is a guy, Kannada guy, who's gone everywhere around the world promoting his language and literature, has to listen to all this nonsense from some random hoodlum on the street. See, yes, as Tushar pointed out, most of these people who are actually involved in this agitation are not the ones who are really serious about their language or culture, because they're not doing anything that matters. They're just trying to create some sort of a political issue for their own personal self-interest.
We have a comment from one viewer. He's saying, I think the problem is in context of Bangalore. I think the problem is with cartelization or unionization of auto drivers in Bengaluru. You will see the issue is mostly with cabbies and auto guys. Rest are mostly chill.
Which is true. A lot of these incidents happen with auto drivers. So, in fact, there are a lot of people who actually drive cabs in Bangalore who come from other states, and because of this sort of a violent activity, most of them have actually formed like common pools and associations to sort of defend themselves. So here also again, it's a bunch of people who basically hate competition. They think that because they are from Karnataka, somehow they have a claim that only they should be given license to run autos or taxis within the city. And one of the beautiful things is like when apps like Uber and all have come, so they have sort of broken some of the grip of these cartels, and these people absolutely don't like it. And these are the issues where the government should step in, because the government is in control of the law and order. If these violent thugs, whoever it may be an auto cartel or a taxi cartel or anybody, is going and attacking somebody else over these issues, the government has to step in and stop them. So
Now, yeah, go on to short.
और इसमें भी इनमें हिपोक्रेसी है, जैसे कर्नाटका में सिर्फ एक लैंग्वेज थोड़ी ना बोली जाती है, उसमें भी मल्टीपल लैंग्वेजेस हैं, तो आप कन्नड़ को कैसे प्रायोरिटी दे रहे हो? तो आप दूसरों को अगेंस्ट डिस्क्रिमिनेट नहीं कर रहे.
Yeah, there is Tulu, there are so many other languages there. Yes.
Yeah. Now, considering the fact that Bengaluru and Kolkata are at different points in their economic history, there must be different kinds of negative effects of language politics in these two cities, right? So could you explain what will be the implications if this goes on in Bengaluru versus what will be the implication to Kolkata if this goes on in Kolkata as well?
In Bangalore, it's very simple. If this sort of politics keep going on, people are going to look at alternative places where they feel much more secure. So cities like Hyderabad, which also has some amount of IT industry, will definitely benefit from this. When it comes to Kolkata, I think when you said there's a 10% growth, I think a lot of it, the growth is actually just happening now, right? So Bengal's been like in much worse compared to the rest of the country. So whatever development is happening is just starting. And if language politics start and they start harassing outsiders from coming in and doing that, then obviously whatever growth you're seeing is quickly gonna, it's gonna start stagnating, and that's a net detriment for Calcutta. Bangalore, because already there's a lot of businesses established, the movement will not really be that drastic.
Yeah.
But see, all you have to do is one or two anchor companies, or somebody says I've had enough and move out. I think that itself will send a signal to the government that they can't do it. Right now they're doing it because they don't see any negative impact of it, but there will be a point of time where companies will say, you know what, this is actually becoming problematic. If violence increases, like why would somebody who's come from other states go and risk living in Bangalore if they have to deal with this sort of violence or even threats of it? Because sometimes it doesn't need to happen that so many people are getting attacked. The fact that some people are getting attacked itself will create a sort of mentally, it creates a sort of a fear, and people react to that. They'll say, you know what, maybe we'll just consider other cities, maybe Hyderabad, maybe Pune, maybe wherever the other IT industries are. So
और ये सारे फेक इश्यूज हैं. अभी बैंगलोर में फ्लड्स आए हैं, बैंगलोर की म्युनिसिपैलिटी इलेक्शंस नहीं हुए हैं, इससे कोई मतलब नहीं, बस इस चीज से मतलब है कि बाहर से लोग आके कौन सी लैंग्वेज बोल रहे हैं. तो इससे पता चलता है कि क्या मोटिवेशन है लोगों की और कौन उनके पीछे ड्राइविंग फोर्स है और वो एक्चुअली क्या करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं और उनकी प्रायोरिटीज क्या हैं.
Yeah. Now, with language politics, let's play the devil's argument here. What about my skills? I was just being born and brought up in this random city. All of a sudden, industries get set up here, and all of a sudden, people who are more skilled than me came here and took all the potential jobs that I could have gone into, and I lost my culture as well, I guess. So why should I face that? And therefore, why shouldn't there be some reservations for the Bhumiputras?
No, but as you said that somebody more skilled than you has come. If if tomorrow that company hires people of lesser skills, that company itself won't exist. Today that company exists because they're actually producing value in the market. Now if we just say get rid of all the talent, we've actually seen that in some African countries where
now why should I have to move out of my city and leave my family and go somewhere just because some government decided to set up a company here, or some businessman decided to set up a company?
But as libertarians, we don't see if the government is coming and taking away your land. Obviously, as libertarians, we oppose that. No government will be able to take away your land.
I'm saying government allowing a business to set up their shop here and taking away my job and forcing me out of the state, essentially.
But what job? No, the job didn't really exist till the company came and started it, right? So if the company leaves, you are back to square one where you were before that company came in. The company coming in did not take away your job. You never had a job in the first place. Now the company came in and somebody else is getting a job. So I think the focus should be on, individually people should be more focused on improving their skills and generating value in the market than crying about other people. The politics of envy and resentment is not really going to help anybody or any civilization grow. And also you are saying your culture is being destroyed. The question to ask is, what have you done to do about your culture? A lot of people today talk about their language, their culture and all, but if you actually look at what they're doing in real life, their activities, it has absolutely no bearing. It's like one of those things that you can go on social media and complain saying my culture is getting destroyed, my culture is getting destroyed, because it's easy to say it. To do something that requires real change requires you to invest time, effort. People don't want to do that. People just want to say the government should impose that only certain language will be spoken here because it's easy. We are saying if you really love your culture, you should put in the effort to go and educate people about your language, make it easy for people to learn them. Just going and trying to force them will backfire, and it also generates hostility towards that language.
Is there any way to make people learn a particular language unless it has some economic value associated with that language? Is there any other way than this?
Okay, so here maybe, this is not like maybe a libertarian point of view, but if you want people to sort of learn your language, I think you should also try to make it easy. And today, if I am moving between cities, one of the problems is, I think, maybe a controversial thing, but I think the script is a problem, because sometimes to read that language requires you to learn an entirely different character set. So maybe if somebody came up with like a common character set, Vietnam did it, they sort of converted it into English. You could read it, right? And then the only thing you have to do is understand what a word means. And today, even a lot of South Indians, we have a lot of Hindi in our vocabulary because these are words that we've heard, right? So things like that, if you simplify the language, and people will automatically pick up a few words if they live there long enough. But in the long term, there's absolutely really no way to ensure that any language survives. Like, we've had like probably tens of thousands of languages, and every day there is some language going extinct somewhere, because people are shifting. Cultures change, right? So even in the state of Karnataka, probably how many dozens of languages have become extinct, those spoken by smaller tribes, smaller groups. Today, even I think compared to Tulu, obviously Kannada is gaining market share. So network effects do matter. And I think the other mistake that people make is that they conflate culture and language together. So I don't necessarily see what the link is between language and culture. It's a nice thing. Some emotions are better expressed in certain languages. But I think you can still protect your culture even if without being tied to a specific language. And in the long term, all you can do is, if you have friends, you have your kids, you have your family, you learn your language and try to promote it, or you offer some sort of a scholarships to learn certain languages. Those are like maybe a market mechanisms to do it. But
और लैंग्वेज बाय नेचर ही एवोल्यूशनरी है. आप 100 years पहले अलग बोलते थे, और 1000 years पहले चले जाओ तो फिर और ज्यादा डिफरेंशिएट हो जाती हो. तो आप ये कह दो कि हम इसी पॉइंट को क्रिस्टलाइज कर देंगे कि अब यही लैंग्वेज इन परपेचुइटी बोली जाएगी सभी लोगों से. इम्पॉसिबल टास्क है.
Now, what about Bhumiputra reservations in the government sector? Because let's say in Kolkata today, Bengali is a language that used to be adored and respected by Indians and nationalists mainly all over the country. They used to learn Bengali just to read Tagore and Bankim Chandra. Now today, Bengalis are having to force Bengalis to learn Bengali because the situation is that all WBCS officers and IPS posts have all been taken up by Jaiswals and Agarwals and stuff. So now the language politicians of Bengal think that unless we get Bengalis into those posts, our state is lost, culture is lost, etc. Now, why is that the case, first of all? And what do we do about that in government sectors where there's no question of jobs coming in or going out?
Okay, so I don't know what happened on the literature scene. If people were learning Bengali at one point of time to read Tagore and why they're not doing on. I don't know. Maybe the quality of literature has dropped. I don't know. Maybe that's the reason. The other thing is translations have become more accessible. Today, if I want to read Tagore, I would read an English translation, or if somebody is a Hindi speaker, they would do that. Back then, also we have to understand that reading anything was limited to a very elite population, right? So most people, what were our literacy rates then? Today we have like a much more number of people who are able to read and write and learn different languages. And when you have the options for them today, if I have a translation of Tagore, I would read that. Now I'm not gonna learn Bengali just to read Tagore, regardless of how great an author he might be, unless I'm an academic or I have some really love for that. So even if okay, the reservation in the government sector is a different thing, but even if, let us say, only Bengalis were in the IAS, I still would not learn Bengali to read Tagore. So I don't think that would help. As for government services, one, from a libertarian party, we believe in absolutely slashing down of the whole bureaucracy, which we see as one of the greatest evils in Indian society. The amount of damages that the babus have caused is so high that the question of who gets reservation in the government is going to be more or less a moot point, because most of these things will actually be removed and decentralized and deregulated, and see a higher private sector participation. For example, at one point of time, all the passport offices in the country used to be full of government officers. Now today, the private sector, like the Tata or whoever is doing it, they still have one or two government guys, but most of the jobs actually got removed. So we see a lot of scope for that in so many different sectors, that issues about who gets government jobs will actually become a sort of a moot point. So, and this is something which we will obviously get a lot of resistance and flack, but absolutely the bureaucracy is the biggest evil in this country, and absolutely has to be cut down in size and power.
Yeah. Now,
politicians
yeah,
का
yeah,
तो
go on,
काम
Prashant.
ही है, मतलब they politicians try to find, कोशिश करते हैं कि कुछ common thread मिल सके जिससे वो they can rile up the people और फिर pit them against each other. तो वो कोई नई बात नहीं है, issues आते रहेंगे. तो वैसे लॉन्ग टर्म देखा जाए कि मतलब ये कोई पहली बार नहीं हो रहा कि इंडिया में लैंग्वेज शोविनिज्म को हो रहा है. मुंबई का भी फेज आया था, अभी भी थोड़ा सा चल रहा है. तो ये लगातार चलता ही रहता है, कोई नई बात नहीं है. कलेक्टिविस्ट्स कुछ ना कुछ स्कीम ढूंढते रहते हैं लोगों को लड़ाइयां करवाने की.
Right. Just today I saw right-wingers celebrating Flipkart, some achievement by Flipkart. I just remember that Flipkart is registered in Singapore. Now, why is that? Why do so many companies register in Singapore?
लीगल सिस्टम यहाँ पे कॉन्ट्रैक्ट एनफोर्समेंट इंडिया की वीक है, तो इस वजह से कंपनीज प्रेफर टू रजिस्टर इन सिंगापुर.
No, because even if a company today, an Indian company is actually getting investment, we've already had those issues with like sort of an angel tax. And the regulatory climate itself is so bad that today, after like many years, suddenly the government will come and pass on some newer tax demand, or say this rule was interpreted in such a way. The whole way that our government works is it's a very adversarial system. They're always trying to find some excuse or the other to do it. So even for raising funds today on international markets or anything that has to do with it, it's much better to do it outside the country. So that is one of the reasons most of these companies incorporate in Singapore, and also so easy, right? And also the taxes are lower there, like at least on whatever money that gets sent there, the taxation is much lower too.
Right. Will you dissolve linguistic states and return them to administrative states?
No, I don't think
हमारा कोई इंटरेस्ट नहीं है स्टेट्स में, हमारा इंटरेस्ट सिटीज में है.
Yeah. We want administrative power to be at a much more local level. Today, the fact that the state of Karnataka exists or the state of Tamil Nadu exists isn't so much as a problem as to the fact that the main drivers of economic growth, which are the cities, are being very neglected. Over the last week, we've seen so many videos of literally people swimming around in sewage in Bombay, city which produces so much economic output. Same thing in Bangalore. So now these cities don't really have the power or the funds available to solve these problems. Yes, there is a lot of political problems as well, but also in terms of funding and the resources available to them, they have limited power. So we want to shift the power back to the local bodies and also give them access to greater amount of funds. So and usually when you talk about problems in Karnataka about language, it's always Bangalore that we are talking about, right? So usually all the center of attention is at
Yes.
Bangalore, Bombay. So these few
Yeah.
cities in the country are the ones which are generating all the wealth. So now the focus
Yeah.
should be on them, and they're generating the money. We want them to have the funds, and people in the cities will have better ability to question their local representatives than call up their chief minister or some minister of the state or at the center. So we want people to have the power more at the city level. So the administrative unit being a linguistic state or something doesn't matter. Obviously, there are some states like UP which are really very big. So those can obviously be divided into further sections. But the core being that the cities will have a greater say over their policies. I think that is actually the thing we should focus on.
Right. Now, this will be my last question before we move on to live chats. The questions from the live chats. The paid members of the channel and the super chats will be given priority, and everyone else's questions I'll be taking along starting now. I'm not going to scroll up an hour back. Okay, guys, please repeat your questions. Hopefully, you are still watching this. My last question is, Ajay, does merit solidify casteism in a sense that whoever is good at whatever job, their children and their descendants keep on being great at that job, and therefore no one else can become richer by being good at anything or
No,
being good at the
absolutely
higher
not.
paid
Like,
jobs?
no, absolutely. No, what you said is great in the sense that it used to work at one point of time when you're looking at things like handicrafts, when you're talking about those artisanal skills, because those have sort of a generational wealth to it. But today, who are the people who are actually making all the money, right? For example, if it's the guy who's programming in some C++ or Python, his father or grandfather wasn't doing it. Or if you're talking about AI tech, right? So most of these
Yes.
things are not sort of passed through generational knowledge transfers. And today with when we have the internet, obviously the access to learning a lot of information has also become easy. So I don't think that merit is something that this was in the olden system where we had all these smithing, carpentry, making all those handicraft textiles. In the modern economy, and the sort of wealth that is created today is not in those traditional sectors. So it has nothing to do with it.
Right. Now, I want to know your party approach. What an individual will do when government officials come to their house to register their caste within 1 year. Should they provide info or opt out?
It definitely. I'm not sure about how the if you have the option to don't know what rules the government will now pass. But as long as they don't make it illegal or threaten you to throw you in jail, I think you should absolutely refuse to give it as a form of a protest. Because at the end of the day, it is more like a performative. It is a protest that you are showing to the government that you are not willing to participate in this whole drama of the caste census, which is yet another scheme by the government to create further divisions. Initially, it was all about Dalits, how they were backward, and the idea was to do it. Then OBCs, and today we are having privileged classes fight. Like even Marathas say we are backward, the Patels say we are backward. It is
Yeah.
funny that in India today, groups are fighting for the right to be called backward, and that's absolutely
Mm.
disgraceful. These sort of
Yeah.
petty politics are drawing the country back. Everybody tomorrow,
Yeah.
if the caste census, provided that the government doesn't make it illegal and get you into trouble, you should have the right to refuse it and refuse to participate in this whole damn circus that these political parties are pushing on us.
Right. How are you going to get city power without working to get to state level?
See, as in the longer term, obviously, we are not talking about our electoral strategy, but we are talking more about what we believe that the policies should eventually do. Tomorrow, if even if we get elected in a city, we'll obviously not have the ability to just say suddenly that the city is going to get funds. So that change can only happen at a much higher level. But we also believe that it's important for people to start talking about this. Like everybody today should start talking about the fact that their cities are very badly mismanaged. They pay a lot of taxes. That money is not being spent on cities. And once people start talking about this, we believe that regardless of whether we are able to implement it or tomorrow, even other parties might see that this is a threat to their power. They might even also start working on these ideas. And in the end, what we want is for the India to be a more free and prosperous country. We don't specifically say that our whole goal is basically to just get win elections. We would like to change things, but if other parties are adopting our policies, it's actually making our life much more easier because obviously politics is a lot. We would love to actually just challenge them and make them change their opinions and policies if they can. We are only forced into this because they're obviously not doing the right thing.
या मैं थोड़ा क्लैरिटी देना चाहूंगा इस चीज पे। बहुत सारे कमेंट्स आते हैं कि तुम तो म्यूनिसिपैलिटी इलेक्शन नहीं जीतोगे, तुम तो रेजिडेंट वेलफेयर एसोसिएशन के इलेक्शन नहीं जीतोगे। तो हमारा ऑब्जेक्टिव वो है ही नहीं। हमारा ऑब्जेक्टिव ये है कि जो ओवरटन विंडो जो लेफ्ट टू लेफ्ट ही जाती जा रही है उसको सेंटर में लेके आया जाए और एक्चुअल सॉल्यूशंस के बारे में बात की जाए और एक प्लेटफॉर्म दिया जाए कि वेयर आइडियाज आर डिस्कस्ड और जहाँ पे सक्सेसफुल और इम्प्लीमेंटेबल सॉल्यूशन के बारे में बात होती है। रेटरिक के बारे में बात नहीं होती कि भाई ऐसा हो जाएगा अगर हम ये कर देंगे तो मैं चेस ह्यूमंस को चेस पीस की तरह ट्रीट करूंगा, मैं यहाँ पे 10 लाख जॉब्स में ऐसे ही क्रिएट कर दूंगा हवा से। तो ऐसी चीजों के बारे में बात ना हो और एक्चुअल पॉलिसी के बारे में बात हो, तो हमारा फोकस उस चीज पे है।
Now, don't you think state language should be must for state government jobs, as they will serve the people of that state where majority speaks that language? So why shouldn't there be again reservation for Bhumiputras, people who know
I
the
mean, it
language?
doesn't have to be see, if for example, if the state government is, for example, having some revenue officers or something, obviously they need to have the ability to talk to it, because the bulk of the people are not going to be able to speak other languages. So there's nothing wrong in insisting that the people learn that language for jobs which require interfacing with the public. If you're going into rural Karnataka and you don't speak Kannada, then obviously that person would be a bad fit. And if you look at it in the private sector, if I don't speak Telugu, and I will not go into rural parts of it and be able to do business there. Either I'll have to hire somebody who does it. If you look at it anywhere, any private sector job today, if it requires interfacing with the local population, they will always say candidate who speaks so and so language is preferred. So put the preference as people who can speak that language for those roles which require interfacing with the rural population or where the communication is important. Nothing wrong with that. We are not talking about saying that nobody should speak in any other language or things like that.
Will you support reciprocal tariffs?
Absolutely no. Unilateral free trade. This is very simple.
मगर
Today,
इसको मगर इससे कंफ्यूज नहीं कर लेना चाहिए कि भाई हम कोई भी कोई कंट्री आई और हम पे डंपिंग करना शुरू कर देगी। हम ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस भी फोकस करेंगे ताकि हमारी लोकल कंपनीज हैंडीकैप्ड ना रहे और बाहर वाली आके अपना अनफेयर कंपटीशन को एडवांटेज ले सके। हाँ ठीक है, वो वाली एस्पेक्ट ठीक है, यूनिलैटरल फ्री ट्रेड वाली, मगर हमें ये इंश्योर करने की जरूरत है कि हमारी लोकल इंडस्ट्रीज हैंडीकैप ना हो ओवर रेगुलेशन से, टैक्सेशन से, लैक ऑफ कैपिटल एक्सेस से, बाबू हरासमेंट से। तो वो सारी चीजें भी हम साथ में करेंगे तो ऑब्वियसली हमारी कंपनी ज्यादा कंपेटिटिव होंगी बाहर वाले मुकाबले।
Yeah. So one of the issues is that with imposing tariffs is that it actually makes our industries very uncompetitive. For example, we have tariffs on steel. So what happens is the automobile sector uses a lot of steel. Now their cost of production actually goes up. And then when they're exporting it, their product actually becomes more expensive. So that is one thing. And in general, tariffs are a price paid by the consumers. Today, if you have a lot of tariffs on steel, every person who's buying a house, who's building a house today, the amount of steel that they use, they're all forced to pay a much higher price for that. And if we are able to get cheaper inputs from the rest of the world, we should absolutely do it. And this is basically just a tax. Tariffs are basically just a tax. Now, if another country wants to actually have tariffs on Indian goods, as a negotiating tactic, you can threaten them, but it usually doesn't really yield much impact, unless of course you are some country like US. But now what's happening even in the US is absolutely crazy. After Trump started the tariffs, their economy has actually started to take a nosedive. Companies are complaining that the raw material costs have gone up. So we also in India, we can also focus on things where we can generate more value than always focusing at the lower level. So reciprocal tariffs, no, absolutely no. We believe in free trade, and we believe that Indians should extract maximum benefit for it. If there are certain industries which are like sort of strategic from a military point of view or a defense related view, those are again slightly, a more detailed policy discussion can be done. But in general, the consumers benefit from lack of tariffs. So this is, and historically the evidence has always been that, tariffs never really help.
Now, right-wingers everywhere in the world have this argument that protectionism to some degree is necessary for some companies at least. Now, we are in a situation in India where there is protectionism going on. At the same time, harassment is also going on. So you are sort of strangling the kid and then forcing him to lie down on a bed of roses. But of course, strangling them. So would they not require any protection if the harassment had become zero?
we've had protectionism for almost 70 years, and look what it did to our industry, right? So today our companies are really not competitive on the global stage. Our automobile industries are also not. So now they're going to have to acquire companies abroad. It's not that there is any lack of talent. We have absolutely smartest people today. If you look at a lot of these companies in the US, in the tech or whichever sector, even in SpaceX, you see a lot of people from India or who moved from here, move there and are working. So the question is never that we have the talent. It is just that the policies are bad. Yeah, absolutely. Deregulation is very important. And also the tariffs hinder creation of higher value goods. If your raw materials become more expensive, then how will your finished good compete with other countries? And also we have to compete with China, right? So they get the benefit of lower produce. Now if I slap a tariff on China, now assuming I'm an automobile company in China and there is one in India, now the one in China is getting steel, let us say, at 100 rupees kilo or whatever, and now the Indian one has to buy it at 128 or 130 or whatever, because of, you call it anti-dumping, whatever, we are having to purchase it at higher price. Now my finished goods will obviously be more expensive than one in China. So how can we compete there? So unless we derive the benefit of getting the lowest cost raw material or intermediary good from anywhere in the world, how can even our manufacturing help? And also the other thing is consumers. If you're forcing consumers to pay 20-30% more on their expenditure, that also decreases the amount of savings that they have, the amount of money. And savings are very important, because only from savings can you actually invest in things, support industries. Even when the companies want money, they have to borrow from banks, and unless there is savings first, you just can't keep printing money out of thin air. So it's all interlinked. So the ending argument being that free trade and is good, and we definitely need to get rid of these protectionist tariffs.
और
there's one
क्रोनीज सबसे बड़ी पार्टी जो एडवांटेज लेती है टैरिफ का, वो क्रोनीज है. स्मॉल बिजनेसेस तो एडवांटेज ले भी नहीं पाते इसके.
हाँ, राइट विंग से एक और आर्ग्यूमेंट है कि यूएसए बना क्योंकि वो इतना मनी सिर्फ छाप लेता है, सिर्फ प्रिंट कर लेता है. हम भी यूएसए बन जाएंगे अगर हम भी उनकी तरह प्रिंट करने लगे. हाउ मच ऑफ दैट इज ट्रू? Is it free markets of USA or the printing machine that helped USA become USA?
See, US was already very big and powerful even before they went off the gold standard. So at one point of time, all the money was basically gold, right? Gold was the currency, but the US was already powerful by then. So I think so that discounts the whole idea that it's printing money that makes US richer. Yes, the US does have some benefit by being the reserve currency of the world, not to deny that. But to think that India can just like print money, we are just going to see inflation. We're going to be another Zimbabwe or Venezuela, where we'll see hyperinflation. And the other question is, okay, leave the monetary policy part of it aside. Why do you actually need to, start printing money if you want to just like distribute it, or just the government spending more schemes? You're destroying the productive economic forces in the country. So bad monetary policy is actually also a huge problem, something that we would like to address. But the whole idea that the government can create money, or or even that the government can generate wealth, is something that should strongly be contested, and people should be educated about it.
Yeah, I'll have to digress a little there because I want to ask something related to inflation only. What do you think of developmental economics?
I am not a big fan of developmental economics. As you can probably guess. See, I believe that free markets have historically always done a much better job. So when you have countries which are obviously which are not very richer, the tweaks in regulation or tax policies can lead to greater wealth being left in the hands of a consumer. Today, even if so what's happening right now is we are focusing largely on the government schemes and the government subsidies and the freebies. We are only looking at one side of the equation. We are not looking at how much money is actually being taken in every single transaction in our life. Today, for example, if an Uber driver spends about 20,000 rupees a month in fuel, 10,000 rupees of that is going in taxes. So tomorrow the government will offer some, your wife scheme, your driver scheme, this scheme, give him 1,000, 2,000 rupees, something, and this thing. And then people will say, oh no, but the government has given us money. But if you look at how much money is actually being taken from them, that is number one. Two, every service is becoming expensive because of the government. Today, if you look at, for example, let's take the case of education. So the government is spending, maybe if you look at it, depends on state to state, even 35 to 40,000 rupees per student is the expenditure by the government. Now, and you have, private schools, low cost schools. When people say private schools, we should not think about all these fancy ones, but low cost private schooling is the biggest untold success story of this country. They are charging probably about 50 to 60% of what the government is spending, and they are actually producing superior results. So, in every aspect, like today, even if some guy in a village today he's buying a motorbike, or even if he's buying a tractor, if you start looking at the amount of taxes that are being levied on everything, whether it be your GST. Today, you are telling me that if you want to build a house and you want to buy cement, there is a 28% GST on it. You go to a hospital, you are dying of some disease. On the medicines, you are charging GST. You get admitted to a hospital. Even on the room, there is a GST. You're taxing people on everything. And then you are saying suddenly the government will give some scheme and everybody's focus is, oh, but without the government schemes, how will the poor survive? It is the absolute distortion. Yes, agreed that there is a percentage of the population who are below poverty line and they've been kept in poverty over the last 50, 70 years of bad economic policies. So we need to uplift them. Only markets can do that. Yeah.
Now, during Corona, this was the question I was about to get to. During Corona, a developmental economist like Abhijit Banerjee suggested just print money and hand people the money. And a pro-free market guy like Dr. Subramaniam Swamy also recommended the same thing. And the government, I'm guessing because of people like Sanjeev Sanyal, his influence, decided not to do it. Now, explain to me, why do these two people from different schools of thought in the realm of economics come up with the same idea? Can you steelman their argument, assuming they didn't have any vested interests?
That would be hard to do. Now, I really can't figure out. Okay, maybe they thought let me think about it in this way. So, what the government did was basically stop all sort of economic activity, right? So then they probably thought that is anyway leading to some sort of like a deflationary pressure because people don't have money, people are not spending anything. So you just give money to everybody, and that would sort of stimulate the economy and keep things running. I'm guessing that is what their position would have been.
कंजम्पशन साइड इकोनॉमिक्स का टारगेट किया जा रहा था कि कंजम्पशन मार्केट में डिमांड होगी तो automatically.
But it's like a very, very special case where the government forcibly stopped all economic activity, right? It stopped production, it stopped consumption by shutting down the country. So it is a very different thing in the shorter term. Maybe just like giving people money would still lead to higher, because your production side, you had a lot of challenges. And even in the US, what happened was, people said, we will print money and that will be fine. It won't cause any inflation and all. And everybody, all the libertarians especially, were screaming out saying, you print money, we're going to see inflation. And they said, first they said, it will not cause any inflation. And then they said, there will be some inflation, but it will be transitory. Then third, now they're saying there is inflation, but it is not a lot. And then they're saying, well, there is inflation, but it's corporate greed. So we have seen literally over the span of 2 years, how they shifted their position. Libertarians were screaming out loud. Every single even from whether it be the Chicago School or whoever, all of the, the modern, the smart economists were saying, you start printing money, you're going to see inflation. And they denied it. They said, no, modern monetary, this, that, spoke about, even Krugman said, it won't cause inflation. And they were all wrong. They had to eat the humble pie. And the sad thing is, they're even not acknowledging it now. Now they're just blaming that companies became greedy. Suddenly, the companies were not greedy before the inflation, before the government printed money. But after they printed, suddenly everybody became greedy and they're hiking up the prices. So that is their explanation. We've seen that, printing money leads to inflation. I mean, that's the definition of it.
Those who really care, those who care lower strata of the society, inflation takes money away from the poor and hands it to those who own the assets. So देखा होगा stock market कैसे boom कर रही थी, और मतलब basically जिनके पास भी assets, land हो गए, stocks हो गए, वो boom करती है inflationary times में. तो automatically case यही बनता है कि आप ऐसे artificially आप prices jack करके तो आप उसकी तरफ shift कर दो resources को, those who already own assets.
But how could they, and why did they defend these positions? Because I'm sure they know something you and I don't. Why would they just simply ignore the possibility of inflation, or do they think some inflation is necessary in the end, so let's just go with it?
हमारी economics education में fault है. 5% inflation पता नहीं कैसे number निकल के आया. It is somehow accepted कि भाई इतना developing economy में 5% inflation चलता है, मगर क्या basis है इस number का, कहाँ से आया है ये?
No, I think sometimes also these economists sometimes come from different schools of thought. So that is also a problem. So I don't really know why, but there are people who actually think that printing money is fine and it won't cause much inflation because they believe that it depends on how you actually distribute the money into the economy, which is also again important. So with respect to COVID, I can understand why they probably felt that way, but as the results show, printing money is going to create inflation here.
Okay. To prevent classes from turning into castes or status groups, periodic market disruptions are necessary. Do you support state funding in tech, especially in areas without short-term profits like space tech in 80s, or would you leave it to free markets?
Okay. One, classes cannot turn into castes anymore, right? So this system of caste that we had is very linked to clans and has come down from thousands of years of stratification because of their work or something and transformed into something else. Today, if there are a bunch of people of different unrelated people who are actually becoming rich, I don't no, sir. Maybe I didn't really understand the question. As far as state funding in tech is concerned, we don't think that we need state funding in tech. We believe that right now there are a lot of barriers to tech. We believe right now there's a lot of funding that foreign companies are willing to do in tech companies in India. But it is so difficult to deal with the regulatory climate. And also after tomorrow, when foreign companies invest in India, they're always worried about what sort of a tax demand will come up after 10 years, 15 years. And as we've seen it, that's what they did with a lot of companies, like whether it be Vodafone or something. Government is creating a very unstable and unpredictable business climate. They'll just change their policies overnight. So as far as investing in tech, no. Investing in space tech, I think there are already private companies which have started space tech in India. And we believe that with a lower taxation, people will have more money. Even the companies will have more money to invest in these startups. We don't see government funding as necessary right now. Just we see that a lot more wealth in the society which can be diverted to these startups if the government stops taking money from people in the first place.
वही तो बात है कि मतलब कि पॉलिटिशियन कैसे डिसाइड करेगा कि भाई ये प्रायोरिटी होनी चाहिए, प्रायोरिटी नहीं होनी चाहिए. अब एकदम से एआई बूम में आ गया. अब इनको लग रहा है कि हमें कंप्यूट का प्राइस कम करने की जरूरत है, हमें चिप्स में इन्वेस्ट करने की जरूरत है. अगर मार्केट नॉर्मली ऑपरेट कर रही होती, एंटरप्रेन्योर्स वुड हैव फिगर्ड आउट कि भाई नेक्स्ट 10 years में दिस विल बी द बिगेस्ट ट्रेंड, और दे वुड हैव रेज्ड फंडिंग फॉर इन्वेस्टिंग इन दीज थिंग्स एंड थिंग्स लाइक दैट. तो गवर्नमेंट क्रिएट्स डिस्टॉर्शंस मोर देन इट एक्चुअली सॉल्व्स प्रॉब्लम्स. And entrepreneurs, those who really have, entrepreneurs जिनके पास ऐसी skin in the game होती है, जिनका risk होता है, downside भी होती है, upside भी होती है, they are much better at allocating capital as compared to government.
How to establish middle stand in India? We have no niche skill set among people.
Oh, but why do we think that we don't have any skill sets among people in India? Okay, so if we are talking about you want to prioritize mid-size companies or I think the government should basically be a little bit hands-free in trying to shape developments, whether on the size of the firm, because the markets lean towards efficiency. There are some cases where really small firms are actually more agile and are able to produce results, and sometimes it's the larger companies that benefit from scale. I don't think the government should be tweaking policy to support mid-sized companies, and also which areas the larger cities benefit because of a larger concentration of human resources. So if you try to pick a model where you want to prioritize like non-urban areas, that also I think can lead to distortions in the market. And yes, when we're talking about industrial skills, yes, there is a bit of shortage in our population of those skills because industries have not been allowed to grow and come, right? Our manufacturing is a very small percentage of that. So once you have more companies come in, that is how people develop skills. And after they develop skills, they start moving to other industries, and there's higher value addition that adds on top of that. So first thing is we need more businesses to grow in India, which the government is stopping right now. Once those barriers are removed, we will see. It won't happen overnight, but even if today you say the government starts a skilling program, we know how efficient the government is going to be at that. So if the government hasn't, we've seen 70 years of track record is there. Its evidence is there. Today, if the government starts like some Narendra Modi technical skilling program, what's going to happen? There's going to be a lot of corruption. The people who are going to pass out are going to have like bad skills, and there will be some certificates which will be bribed. We see again and again and again. So yeah.
Would you want India to have an Al Jazeera equivalent to manage global narrative?
No, absolutely no. One, we already have Doordarshan, so I mean, if we have a state-funded channel anyway, and the thing is, narratives
are wasting everybody's money. No one's watching it. No one's getting influenced by it.
Nobody watches it. And the thing is, see, when India is growing, we don't have to, doctor false narratives about the country, right? The economic growth will speak for itself. And also, I believe that now we have the rise of alternative media, right? So the impact of traditional media is sort of waning. So we don't need like an Al Jazeera or something. We have a lot of people on alternative media. We have podcasters, we have YouTubers who are, some of them have like millions of subscribers and also international reach. I think these are more than enough to sort of project any sort of false narratives that are being pushed by certain vested media channels. Traditional media versus traditional media will not really work, because most of the time what happens is, even, see, for example, you might think that there is a certain national policy thing where, other countries like, maybe Qatar is funding Al Jazeera to sort of, show India in a bad light. But what will happen when the government, let us say, okay, we have an Indian Al Jazeera tomorrow, the government is just going to focus on promoting false facts that are important to that government. For example, they'll speak more about their economic growth, they'll manufacture statistics, they'll be more focused on pushing that. What the people want, what is really important, those will be neglected again. So again, it will be taxpayers wasting money. So we believe that we need a more enlightened citizenry. We have seen that during the last war, obviously there are a lot of political commentators and military commentators who have broken down a lot of things and disputed some false narratives being pushed by the Pakistan and things. So I think let a lot of these channels emerge. We should also subscribe to these creators and push narratives. It should be a mass driven movement rather than few elites trying to control the conversation. I think that's at least
right. Both central and state governments promote English as only medium of instruction. Would LPI still support such colonial policy or give freedom to do medium of instruction in the language people like?
But this is actually not that the government is pushing for it. In Rajasthan, actually, they have noticed that, they are offering local Hindi medium of instruction, but parents themselves are demanding. Today, regardless of whether, how India became an English-speaking population today, if a private school today offers Hindi as the medium of instruction, it will find very few takers, because the market has more or less already decided that learning English is very beneficial in the global economy. People are gravitating towards that. Now the government today can offer Hindi speaking, it can do all these decisions, but the best thing is, let the government get out of the business of education. Let private schools come up. Some of them will offer Hindi, Telugu, Kannada, Tamil. Let people decide it. Personally, I think people will gravitate towards the ones with the highest network effects. But who am I to decide that? Let people choose for themselves with their own money. Let them pay whichever private school they want. Let that be a free market instead of government promoting one language over the other, which again creates issues. If the government says Hindi is compulsory, then people in Tamil Nadu will get upset and say why. Then they'll start a 3-language formula. Then tomorrow in Karnataka, somebody will say Tulu, so make it a 4-language formula, and we will just be learning languages all our life instead of like science, technology, AI, or anything else. So
this is a classic problem with most Indians. I think pretty much everywhere in the world. People pass out of their schools and 5 years later they forget that they didn't really like studying all that much, and right when they are in their late 20s and 30s they start saying that everything they personally like should be mandatory in every school. All of their personal interests all of a sudden must be mandatory and should be compulsory to be taught until class 12, etc.
ये जो एजुकेशन में बात होती है, सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट चीज जिसके बारे में बात नहीं होती, आपको सबसे पहले कंटेंट क्रिएट करने की जरूरत है, रिसर्च क्रिएट करने की जरूरत है लोकल लैंग्वेजेस में. अब साइंटिफिक रिसर्च जब हो ही नहीं रही हिंदी या फिर आपकी लोकल लैंग्वेज में, तो फिर आप कैसे एक्सपेक्ट कर सकते हो कि उससे कुछ सीखेंगे. जब अब प्रोग्रामिंग हिंदी में होती ही नहीं, आपको इंग्लिश की नॉलेज होनी चाहिए, कर्सरी नॉलेज है प्रोग्रामिंग सीखने के लिए. तो जब अब ये नहीं है कि उसमें इंग्लिश प्रमोशन की बात नहीं है, मगर वो बात है कि आपको बिजनेस में तो फंक्शनल होना जरूरी है ना, एम्प्लॉयबल तो होना जरूरी है, तो आपको वही लैंग्वेज सीखनी पड़ेगी जिससे आपको एम्प्लॉयमेंट मिलेगी. फिर नेचुरली पेरेंट्स उसी लैंग्वेज पे ध्यान देते हैं जो कि जिसको
Yeah.
पढ़ने का कुछ बेनिफिट हो.
Yeah. Without land reforms like Asian tigers, libertarianism will devolve into feudalism. Would a land value tax be on the table to replace most taxes?
Okay, firstly, we already had land reform. That is what happened after independence, where the government basically said any land over a certain amount of value will be taken. We have land ceilings, which till date exist and create a lot of issues. So we've already had the government do land reform. The fact that they didn't do a good job about it is basically a reality. And we know that today, if we sort of say that's another sort of a land reform, today most of the value in the country is not generated from industries that benefit from the land, but because of the sort of value that add to it. Would a land value tax? I know a lot of libertarians also advocate for the land value tax because it's sort of there's no deadweight losses there and it's considered a little bit more optimal. But I think let us focus on the greater debate instead of trying to figure out which form of taxation is better. And there are merits to that argument. The question is, why do we need to generate so much money in form of taxes? The government spending in this country is absolutely out of control. Like so many, even today, there's just another scam that came up about, some MNREGA related scam. And, the government is just funding money into these welfare schemes, wasting tax money on corruption, fraud, and mismanagement. Let's cut down the government taxation so that the government spending, so that our taxation automatically goes down. We can always have a debate about what the optimal form of taxation is, because you just can't change everything to LVT across the whole country. There are going to be some sort of distortionary effects in the way that people think about land. And it also is a very personal thing, right? Tomorrow, if all the tax money is being extracted just from land taxes, people who own houses and don't want to keep paying annual taxes would be a little bit upset, because people like to think that once they have a house, they sort of want to feel secure about it, whether or not their income sources come in. So there are certain more sensitive issues around it. I'm not opposed to the idea of an LVT, but the question is, why are we even thinking about what tax? Let's cut down all taxes first, and then the final details, when we are at that optimal level, try to figure out the best way to fund whatever minimal functions of the government are left.
Now, one argument from the go on.
एक एडिशनल बात ये भी है कि हमारा कोई ऐसे वो नहीं है कि वी आर एडमेंट, मतलब हाँ कुछ पॉलिसी प्रोग्राम एडमेंट है, मगर हमारा फोकस इस चीज पे भी कि डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन होगी तो cities और municipalities will be able to experiment what is the best way to function. हो सकता है किसी एरिया में लैंड वैल्यू टैक्स काम कर जाएगा, हो सकता है किसी एरिया में ना करे, तो मगर वो फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी लाने की जरूरत तो है कि दे कैन एक्सपेरिमेंट. अभी तो हम उस स्टेज पे ही नहीं है कि what is good for my area on the tables we have.
Now, one argument from the right-wing side has been that Operation Sindoor conclusively proves that your taxes are justified. That all that complaining about caramel popcorn and stuff, now you see, you stupid people, you were paying for those missiles that bombed Pakistan's asses. So what about that?
What percentage
will we be without taxes?
What percentage of the money is being spent on the military? Right. So if we look at it, like is all the amount of GST and everything, is all of that only being spent on military? So that is like a really sad excuse. And obviously,
military,
as a party, we believe that we can see more efficiency even there in government spending. If a lot of deregulation happens, and even on the military tech sector, there might be companies which might come up with more cost-efficient drones, much better technology, and that is such a silly argument that all the money. Then okay, if all the money is going for Operation Sindhu, then where is the MNREGAs coming from? Where is the MSP money coming from? Where are all the welfare schemes being collected from? So you want to say that okay, military spending and defense spending is fine. Okay, that doesn't have anything to do with the government just hiking up taxes to fund all welfare schemes. These two are not even related.
What are your concrete measurable goals then? List at least a few ones you will use to measure your state of progress.
Okay, this is a challenging question. So our concrete measurable goals are obviously to get more people to agree with our ideas, to understand our ideas, have a dialogue with us, and also be part of our movement to spread these ideas, because we are few people and this has to be sort of a mass revolution or a change in consciousness. For decades, people have been so brainwashed with socialist ideas that we've seen barely any growth. So, and we are thinking about businesses and capitalism and free markets as evil and oppressive. So that has to
Yeah.
change. So we would want a lot more people joining the movement, and also
Hmm.
talk to other people, educate them about markets. Everybody
Hmm.
has to pitch in and participate. So our goal is first to boost up the amount of participation from the public, and then obviously an electoral plan is in the works. After we get
Hmm.
enough support and we get more feedback from the people as to
Yeah.
our strategies. So there's a lot of things that are going on. It would be a little bit premature to set out concrete goals, but one goal is there. We want more people in the movement. We want more people on our side, and
Yeah.
definitely, yeah.
Most political parties give one candy and multiple Karela. How do we counter this? We need all good policies or policies which aren't Karela. How can commoners have control in policies?
Okay,
Decentralization.
so yeah, we want to bring the policies. No, but I think what he also said is like, how would people respond to these ideas? So, as libertarians, we believe in, like, being absolutely honest about what our intentions are, what our policies are. Some of these policies are a bitter pill for people to swallow, and we have to convince them that. So when a person is sick, uh, the medicine might not be nice, but I don't think it will take much convincing for them after a point that they have to take the medicine, whether or not they like it. They might need to have a corrective surgery, which can be painful. So this is something, obviously, we need a lot more people to work with us and educate people and change their minds. So changing hearts and minds, yes, we are on it. It is going to be, some policies are going to be very difficult for people to accept. But one good thing, or however you see it, is that we are not going to show you a candy and then give
Hmm.
you something else. We are just going to
Yeah.
be very straight with the policies that we believe in,
Yeah.
and we will try to convince you about the merits of it.
Yeah.
या
What is
कि
your position
हमारा कोई
on? Yeah. Yeah.
इंटरेस्ट
Go on, Tushar.
हमारा
Yeah.
हमारा कोई इंटरेस्ट नहीं भी हाँ हमें कुछ पावरफुल पॉलिटिशियन बनना है वो तो
Hmm.
कोई है नहीं who is promoting our ideas, so we have to do it on our own. We aren't interested in we have to grab power status and all things like that. Real problem
Yeah.
solving doesn't happen in the government. It
Hmm.
happens in the private, in via entrepreneurship.
Hmm. What is your position on green energy? Should we focus on it or become first world, then focus on green energy?
No, absolutely. No, I believe that we need to focus on green energy. This is something that I strongly believe in. And the greenest form of energy is nuclear energy. And we need that. For decades, the leftists and communists and socialists across the world have sabotaged nuclear energy. And today, for a country to grow, there's nothing more important than energy. If you look at any country that is highly developed, you will notice that the amount of energy consumption in that country per capita is really high. There is no substitute to it. We need a lot of energy, and only nuclear energy can do it. And nuclear energy is probably the greenest form of energy. So in that sense, absolutely, we support green energy, and our focus should be there. The Indian government is actually, unlike most other Western countries, is not as resistant to nuclear energies, which is a good thing. But we are seeing a lot of politically motivated local protests which are sabotaging these plans. So we'll have to fight harder, and people should come together. So yeah, nuclear
Hmm.
energy is the way ahead, and that's a very green energy. Yeah.
Hmm. Does Libertarian Party of India support foreigners purchasing the property in our country? CSK is not sure, meaning I'm not sure.
Okay. So I don't see. I mean, I don't see any problem with people buying land or
East
property
India
in our country.
Company.
I'm sorry.
East India Company.
Well, East India Company didn't really just like buy land. They just basically came, tied up with all these kings, divided them, and then basically said all this land is now ours. Start paying taxes. So
What if
East India
Amazon
Company
does the
did
same thing?
one. The country has so much land that it would be very difficult for Amazon or anybody to actually start buying it. And as they start buying it, the price of this will also start gonna go up, that it would actually make no sense. And two, even if an Amazon, and even if, say, for example, Amazon starts buying a lot of land, they're not gonna start randomly asking people to pay taxes. And I really don't see that as a problem. And for example, in the US, today, any Indian, even you don't have to leave the country, you can just go buy land in the US. So if they are not worried about it, why are we worried about it? I understand certain national security interests. I'm not going to be very obtuse towards that. Like, for example, if you have like a proxy of the Pakistani military that is coming up and buying land in
Yeah, yeah,
Kashmir, you have a
yeah,
national interest there. But
yeah.
otherwise, if people are buying land, what happens when a foreign company is actually buying land? it doesn't mean that you are forced to sell. Your land is still yours. You don't have to sell it. Now, if you are willing to sell out your land to a foreign company, then, what are we really talking about? Two, that person also benefits from, let us say, a higher price, right? So, for example, if foreign company is coming and offering it, they also have to compete with the market and have to offer a higher price. So even the person who owns the land is benefiting from a higher price, which he can go then invest in maybe his own business or buying something else that he believes that is going to add value. And there is so much of land in this country. Utilization is actually very low. We don't really have to get so paranoid about it. And in fact, let's have this discussion where everybody in the world is rushing to buy land in India. Right now, we are in a country where most of them don't want to do anything in India because they're so worried about rule of the law and property rights there. So I don't think we should worry about that.
We have two interesting follow-up questions on this topic, so we'll just go through them. Jews bought lands in masses in Palestine, and that's how it helped them form their country. And another person is saying China buying up sensitive land is dangerous, in my honest opinion.
With respect to the China thing, I have already said, see, China, a lot of things are basically Chinese state-owned companies. So a little bit of vetting their background checks there are fine, especially in sensitive areas. Now, if Chinese government wants to come and buy some prime urban property in the center of the city, they're largely going to use it for doing some business or something like that. Unless there is a security threat there, if it is next to a military base or something like that, then such restrictions are understandable from that sense. And sorry, what was the other thing you mentioned other than the China?
Hold on. No, not China. That's not Israel. He was just pointing out that Jews bought lands in masses in Palestine, and that's how it helped them form their country.
Well, actually, that is not really true. They did buy some amount of land, but the remaining part of it started, after they started kicking out the Palestinians and the Arabs. They fought with each other. See, nobody is innocent there. Both parties, the Jews were trying to form a country by initially buying land and trying to pool it together. But then obviously these people said, we are not going to sell you land, and they stopped other people from selling it. But these are extremely far-fetched, unlikely scenarios that somebody is going to buy so much land, try to form another country within the scope of India, and so I think
especially when there exists a central government, it's not the same as when Sir Thomas Roe for the first time set his foot in India.
Absolutely.
Should we, like US, have cities competing with each other to give ease of business to encourage more business instead of businesses coming to the area to make business?
Should we have cities competing with each other? Right now, cities in India also compete. Hyderabad is competing with Bangalore all the time. And we have states that are competing. We have Gujarat that's competing with Tamil Nadu for this thing. So this competition already exists, but we would like this competition to be sort of like a fair thing. We don't want the government of one state say that, we'll give you all this land for free, and that land they're basically stealing from farmers and things like that. We want to stop, but otherwise competition is fine between cities or states. It's already happening right now.
Yeah, we have another follow-up for the land buying question. Someone is disagreeing and saying, how is it far-fetched? Look at Sri Lanka and Hambantota. There also China's geopolitics gains were won by buying land in those countries.
Yeah, but that is well, okay. For example, the China keeps buying land around the world, but this is the Chinese government that is doing it, right? So when the Chinese government is going to invest in something that has potential military application, then you can stop it. But if they want to buy a shopping mall, do you really want to stop it?
Right. If you are against tariffs, how will you deal with state-supported dumping by countries like China? We kind of touched upon this. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I know. So, for example, if the Chinese government wants to subsidize steel, and millions of Indian consumers benefit from cheaper steel, the benefit that we derive is actually much higher than any specific loss to a few targeted companies there. And today there are companies, there are countries around the world which a lot of them you import raw materials and steel. That's not really stopping the development. I think we also need to figure out higher value goods that are being produced which also suffer. So yeah, I think dumping is not, it's just it has a bad connotation. But if you look at it, I think Chinese government wants to pay me money so that I can build my house for cheaper. Translating to that, we should exploit all their subsidies while they're doing it and extract wealth from China. When we are doing that, we are extracting wealth from China, and it's a good thing.
Do you remember the story of that guy who was the Treasury Secretary of Harvard University when Mark Zuckerberg was in the university? That guy got fired from his job as the Treasury Secretary or as the economic advisor to Barack Obama or Bill Clinton or somebody for saying that we should dump all our waste in Africa because Africa was going to benefit off of it. They were going to pay the countries in Africa to take their waste, but he was accused of racism and fired. Would that be dumping and would that be fair?
Okay, so here there is a problem with pollution. See, pollution is a complicated topic because there is an externality to it. So now the thing is, like even within India, right? We do dump stuff. It's not that we don't dump stuff. We have all these waste dump yards where you have waste from around the country that is going and dumping it. Now, see, Africa being a poorer country, and if they have a huge amount of land, and they say, some of that we are going to trade off. See, it's not that Africa is like a very, I mean, well, when I say Africa, it's a continent, but we're talking. Let's say when I say Africa, we're talking about some of the poorer countries. Now, the quality of the life there is already so bad now, and then like you have people dying of malaria, everything. Their economies are not really doing well, and if they have the ability to benefit some money by saying cordoning of some part of the land as a waste dump yard. See, end of the day, everybody has to try to capitalize on a few things. Now, yes, okay, let us say Africa doesn't do that. They don't get money, and the people are poor and they'll keep dying. Now you're worried about some pollution that is going to affect the health of people at a future date, where we don't know tomorrow the technology might be able to actually even clean these up in the future, right? So it's not always that whatever is polluted is gone for the rest of this thing. And when you have large chunks of land, designating some parts of it for waste, as all countries do. I mean, it's like if US is not putting the waste in Africa, it is putting it somewhere else. So I mean, we probably have to think about it slightly more than in a very basic morality point of view. You have to look at the economic argument there as well.
Yeah. Do you agree with Thomas Sowell's explanation of why historically Africa has been poor forever and ever because of the way their geography is, because of the lack of connectivity to seas?
Geography also definitely plays a huge role. So there's no doubt about it. When you have a climate like that, when you have sort of even like there's some Africa has a lot of these malaria, these sort of diseases and all, which are very common there. I think some parts of the world had benefits from having more fertile land, which helped greater development of agriculture. They had surplus food that they could store. It was not always just like hunting or just like living off of that month or year. So I think there is a very, I mean, that is definitely a part aspect of it. I don't think there's anything wrong in that explanation for why.
What else would you blame Africa's failure on?
I think, well, geography and then, of course, European colonization of Africa didn't really help because as you've seen how they in Congo and all. And even now, for example, France does have like a sort of a neo-colonialism where they have control over some of these countries where they're not able to print their own currency. The France has control and all.
और पोस्ट कॉलोनियलिज्म के बाद भी उनके लीडर्स निकल के आए हैं, वो सोशलिस्ट माइंडसेट के ही निकल के आए हैं.
Yeah.
And also there's another thing. So when one of the problems that happened post-colonialism is that a lot of when we had like sort of stateless societies, a lot of groups and tribes used to form their own region. So the governments, when they started creating all these borders and all, they didn't really respect the way that how some of these groups had existed in the past or their territories. So then it created a whole bunch of different conflict and ethnic strife between various groups. And we have seen that in India also. So some of this also contributed to it. And then as Tushar said, obviously a lot of socialist ideas, a lot of these socialist revolutionary leaders. So it is a mess. But hopefully some of the countries like Botswana have done well, and even Rwanda after the whole genocide and all, some of them been doing well on their economy. So it does have hope, provided they embrace the right ideas and they have like some good transformative leadership there.
We gave up APIs for medicine to China due to quote-unquote cheaper inputs. China now supplies 80% of APIs and we could not import them during COVID. So this is a statement, not really a question. But do you have anything to say to that?
No, it's not that we gave up APIs. Yes, well, if the Indian government has really been suppressing manufacturing, been harassing these companies from growing, China just took over that market. Today, what can you do, right? You have to let the industry start growing in India. And that is what we are saying. Deregulate it, make things easy for businesses to do. If China can make it, India can do it too. But it will take time now.
Since you all are libertarians and stand for free speech and expression, would you all allow burning of the country flag and constitution as freedom of expression?
Okay, so here, this is like one, I would like to slightly reframe this question. I wouldn't want to say, would you all allow burning and all? I would like to say that in a civilized society, nobody should be penalized for burning a flag or any symbol. The US allows it. There is no problem there. It's not that they're not a civilized society. They're a civilized society. And it's not that American country's interests are being harmed by somebody doing that. And most of these issues are really stupid when it comes to the constitution, the flag. It is some attention-seeking guy does it, and immediately the government throws him in jail, and suddenly he becomes like some celebrity or something. Bunch of useless socialists who are fit for nothing, or some people just for attention seeking, they do this. And why give them attention? If somebody is burning them, let them do it. Does it? Either country is so fragile that we can't even tolerate somebody who is burning a symbol. I mean, I believe that we are stronger, and we are not those SJWs who say that we are trigger words. In US you have this concept of trigger words and microaggressions and things like that. I don't think we are such a bunch of woke SJW easily triggered people. I think we are a civilization that's like a few thousand years old. We are strong, and we should not care about such things.
Considering India's jugaad and corruption, how would a limited government provide guardrails against tribalism, ensuring a truly free yet cohesive and orderly society?
Well, jugaad and corruption are basically consequences of the heavily regulated state. As far as tribalism, we believe that obviously greater urbanization and greater economic development is obviously automatically going to take care of tribalism. We've seen that in cities it's actually decreasing. So
all the lowest cost raw materials like steel, plastics, chemical come from China. I'm not even talking about electronics. Focusing everything on cheaper inputs will have 500 bill trade deficit.
Okay, because we are only looking at it in terms of China, right? Once you have the cheaper inputs and our company starts taking over the higher value exports of it, then we will be having a surplus with other countries. So it will balance out, right? So if you are taking raw materials from them, you're also producing something of value, and then a lot of that will get exported. So
what do you think about capture theory? Is approval voting and sortition the best solution?
Okay, the approval voting and sortition the best theory. I am really not sure about it. I wouldn't like to comment because I haven't really formulated my thoughts around sortition. I would say like right now I don't have an opinion on it. I would probably have to think about it a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah, academic question anyway.
Tushar, and if Tushar wants to speak, he can probably.
Okay.
No, I got nothing to say.
Okay. Look what's happening in with diploma mills in a free market like Canada. It's damaging to the sector itself. How will you deal with such cases?
Canada is not a free market.
It is not a free market. Most of the colleges are government run, right? So, the reason why people go and get a diploma mill there is not because they want to learn something, because it allows them an easy access to get residency within Canada. So the government itself has sort of distorted the market by saying, okay, you do college and immediately you'll get residency and eventual citizenship. So people are just paying money. So the diploma mill thing is basically it is a sort of money that you're paying to get a Canadian PR or citizenship. It has nothing to do with education at all.
Right, exactly. Do you think government has a business opening up coaching centers for civil service is something which is happening in Gujarat?
We want to get rid of the civil services, and you're asking if we should have a business opening coaching centers? Absolutely no.
Or
no, absolutely no.
वैसे भी most famous coaching center is a government run नहीं है, private run है और वो Delhi में है.
Yeah. Where does the line between freedom of speech, expression, and tolerating the intolerant lie, if it exists at all?
So the thing is, as long as
no tolerance.
So when you say intolerance, it has to be like what is intolerance. So for us, the free speech expression, we believe that anything, unless it is actively inciting violence. So for example, in US, they had this Supreme Court judgment called Brandenburg versus Ohio, where the government where the court has ruled that only when there is a possibility of imminent lawless action, like for example, if I am out with a mic and saying, let's go kill these people, some group of people, and trying to incite a crowd and a riot. So that is definitely not considered under speech. But other than that, obviously you have wider flexibility in things that you say, even distasteful things, even insulting things. I think part of growing up is sort of being able to tolerate speech without immediately wanting them to be arrested or using some violence against them.
Does Libertarian Party of India support banning Pakistani influencers or players and artists from working in our country?
Why would we want to ban an artist from working in our country? I mean,
because
I
our
understand
monies
the whole.
contribute not just from the emotional standpoint, because our money directly contributes to their economy, which they use to missile our assets. So for that reason.
But why are people even watching these guys or listening? The best way to do it is if you do it like so you are saying that if we are so helpless that if a Pakistani YouTuber comes and we automatically want to give him the money, we don't like the fact that he's sending money to Pakistan. It is against our interest. But we will not even do so much as unsubscribe. We want the government to ban them. Like, let us have a little bit greater sense of awareness and let us take greater responsibility on ourselves. If we believe that something is hurting the national interest, don't follow them, unsubscribe them. Is there any shortage of content in the country? I don't think that you should think in those terms. For those who do, you have all the tools available.
Why there was no inflation during 2008 crisis? Even then they printed money and bailed out the banks. There was though, no?
Okay. Okay. Was there? Because I
इंडिया
think
में तो इंडिया में डबल डिजिट इन्फ्लेशन आ गई थी. आप किसकी बात कर रहे हो?
यूएसए में? हाँ.
Because most of the money from the US also spread around the world in terms of various investments and goes around there. I think probably that is partially one of the reasons, and also it is because maybe a lot of that money didn't really. It wasn't helicopter money.
और 2008 का जो क्राइसिस था उसका मैक्सिमम जो क्या कहते हैं बेल आउट, हु बेल्ड आउट द यूएस यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स गवर्नमेंट को किसने बेल आउट किया था, तो उसका आंसर चाइना का सेवर्स है. तो इस वजह से भी डायरेक्ट इंपैक्ट नहीं पड़ा था.
Yes.
China became one of the biggest bond holders of the US market after the 2008 crisis.
Did you think the 1991 liberalization worked out the way it should have?
Well, I don't know what is the way it was planned to be. I mean, definitely we had to deregulate the economy. The problem was we didn't really deregulate it enough. We still have a very tight grip. The government has a very tight grip on the economy and the manufacturing, and that is the reason why we didn't do. But obviously, I mean, as somebody who even old enough to remember those days, the world is today in a very drastically a different place. And I'm sure a lot of your viewers are like very super young, so they wouldn't know how it was where you had to wait for years for a phone connection, or whether when a second-hand car used to be more expensive than a new car, because a new car means you have to wait for 2 years or 3 years in a queue, but a second-hand car means it's available right now, and there was a time premium there for a second-hand car. So it was a very drastically a different time, and liberalization changed that, and we are definitely much better off, but we should have done a way lot better. I mean, it was imposed on us, right? The whole liberalization was not one of by choice.
हम बार बार प्रमोट करते रहते हैं कि वी नीड अ 1991 2.0. ठीक है, उस टाइम के हिसाब से 19 जो एलपीजी रिफॉर्म्स है वो ठीक थे. नाउ वी नीड टू गो फार अहेड और मूव इन द डायरेक्शन ऑफ डीरेगुलेशन, डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन एंड get rid of all the taxes, unnecessary taxes.
Now, guys, since we are at the 2-hour mark, we won't be able to take any more audience questions. We'll just take this one from Abhay and one of my personal questions. Unless you do a super chat question, then we will prioritize it. So the second last question for today is, he doesn't want groups like BlackRock to invest because they will influence Indian society, culture, and internal politics to such an extent. Is there any way to prevent them? Should we prevent them, etc.? That's my question to you.
I don't think BlackRock is really going to influence anything by investing in India. And so the thing is, when somebody is investing in a company, why are we looking at it in terms of anything more than like a pure economic thing? How is it? For example, if BlackRock suddenly comes and starts investing in India, and I'm a vegetarian, am I suddenly going to start eating beef because BlackRock came into the country? So I don't really know like what sort of influence that these companies are
pushing DI transgenderism into kids' minds in the society, etc. That stuff.
Okay, one, I think the responsibility is always with the parents. If today your kids are going and saying, suddenly today I'm a boy, tomorrow I'm a girl, you have failed as a parent to educate them and give proper values. One, if you give the this responsibility to the government. It has already happened. Like, for example, why are we talking about DEI in the US? Like, how much of stuff is already there in India where we have this group is reserved, this group is reserved, these people are backward, these people empower, all that stuff is already happening here. That is a different aspect of it. I don't think we should worry about it because I believe culturally we are a little bit more resilient than
और
some of
दूसरा
these
क्वेश्चन
countries.
ये क्वेश्चन भी उठाना चाहिए कि इंडिया के पास ऐसे इंस्टीट्यूशंस क्यों नहीं है ब्लैक रॉक टाइप के
या अरे बाबुओं को पैसा देके भिखारी होंगे तो ब्लैक रॉक कैसे बनाएंगे? The last question for today is why are freebies bad for the society and the economy?
Well, freebies are bad because
क्योंकि they take
sorry, Tushar, go ahead.
Yeah, both
resources from
of
the
you answer.
productive and they take resources from the productive and hand them to the unproductive.
And also it just
Or-
makes people lazy. It also makes people lazy, right? If you're getting money for nothing, one, you see, I can understand the idea that
they are
you know
they are
when
basically
sometimes-
incentivizing laziness.
Absolutely. You know, there a lot of times people say that, you know, I have work, but nobody wants to come and work because the government is giving them some freebies. So the guy will just do some basic work, whether he'll show up for MNREGA work, whether he does work, doesn't work, he'll get some money, he'll go have a drink now. And then after that, nobody comes up to, you know, you're crowding out the labor that the private sector needs. And two, as Tushar said, you're taking
आप सोच सकते हो कि हमारी कंट्री में क्यूरियस सिचुएशन है कि एक तरफ लेबर शॉर्टेज भी है और एक तरफ पॉवर्टी भी है.
Yeah, it absolutely makes no sense.
Yeah, in this context only, someone has a pushback question in the BlackRock context that if BlackRock doesn't have influence, what about the ESG stuff that was all pushed by BlackRock, and then they forced American companies to do ESG while having a fun time with Chinese companies whom they didn't force to do ESGs. So what if BlackRock invests in India and becomes again powerful and relevant in Indian context in the minds of Indian businesses, and then pushes them to do things that are harmful for Indian businesses while not doing the same things to Chinese companies?
No, but if you look at it, the ESG was a demand. It's not just the BlackRock suddenly came up with this whole ESG thing. The leftists in the US have been actually pushing for these for a long time. And this has actually pervaded into public consciousness where this actually became like an electoral issue, wherein even politicians and governments were saying that, you know, governments in US have started so many diversity schemes. They have, even for federal contracts, there is a certain sort of a reservation that is given to members of minorities or something. So those concepts and all, it wasn't that BlackRock suddenly came up one day and said, we are going to push ESG on everybody. BlackRock was responding to them, and also because the voters were influenced by that. And in a democracy, it's your battle of ideas, right? The leftists did that, and they were pushing bad ideas, and these companies were responding to it. And then they started, the government started saying, we're going to target companies that are like polluting more or are not considered green. They said, we'll start giving subsidies, we'll start giving benefits, and immediately everybody will start running towards these sort of ideas. So it's not something that a corporation dreamed of. This is something that happened at a society level with the battle of ideologies, and that is what we should combat all the time.
Yeah, this is one thing people forget.
मैं बात करना चाहूंगा कि थोड़ी ना टेंडेंसी होती है इसमें डेमोक्रेसीज में, कोई जिंगोइस्ट लीडर आगे कहेगा कि मैं आपकी सारी प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व कर दूंगा, आप मेरे को सारी पावर्स दे दो, और लोग अपना उसमें आगे लेजी माइंडसेट में आगे कि हाँ ठीक है, ये हमारा सेवियर आ गया, ये हमारी सारी प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व कर देगा, उसको पकड़ा देते हैं पावर, और फिर ही यूजेस द सेम पावर टू हरास द सेम पीपल. तो ये इस वक्त अब तक की हमारी स्टोरी है. तो हमारा एक मतलब कि साइकोलॉजिकल अगर वो बात करेंगे, अगर माइंडसेट डेवलप करने की जरूरत है इंडियंस में, तो फिर वो सेल्फ रिलायंट, अगर आप कंट्री को सेल्फ रिलायंट बनाना चाहते हो मगर खुद सेल्फ रिलायंट नहीं होना चाहते, तो वो इनकंसिस्टेंट पोजीशन है. तो अगर आप चाहते हो कि कंट्री सेल्फ रिलायंट हो, तो आपको भी सेल्फ रिलायंट होना पड़ेगा कि मैं अपनी प्रॉब्लम्स खुद सॉल्व कर सकता हूँ, कि किसी को आउटसोर्स नहीं करूंगा अपनी प्रॉब्लम के, कि कोई पॉलिटिशियन या फिर ब्यूरोक्रेट मेरी प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करेगा तभी वो प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व होगी. आप अपने लेवल पे भी कर सकते हो, और ये एक माइंडसेट डेवलप करने की जरूरत है कि कैन डू एटीट्यूड और सेल्फ स्टार्टर होना.
राइट, वी हैव सम
लिबर्टेरियनिज्म को प्रैक्टिस में लेके आना है, ऐसे नहीं कि बस मैं तो थियोरेटिकल लिबर्टेरियन हूं.
Some pushback statements on the BlackRock issue. They manipulate other investments by being crony themselves. It's already happening. DI and DSG are part of all major corporations. All HRs are using pronouns, etc. These hedge funds manipulate free markets and destroy their fundamentals. I'm against any investment products that aren't directly tied to actual economic activities. I dislike derivatives especially. Do you have anything to say to these counters?
So as I said earlier, lot of these things actually, even when you're talking about any cronyism, BlackRock can't just directly come and impose things. It is because of the governments that is in control that have the ability to pass legislation that a lot of things come up. And if the government is offering special benefits, everybody is going to rush towards DEI and things like that. So from a social point of view, that is what we need to cut off. And as for derivatives, we absolutely do not agree. I mean, markets have to be very efficient, and derivatives actually play a very important role in that. So it's a very important thing in price discovery and making markets efficient. So they look complicated, but they are a part of the market.
Yeah, and Dubai is coming up with new financial instruments every almost second. Would you remove blasphemy laws? Let's let this be the last question for today, because it's a super chat.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. There is no such thing. There are no holy cows from the Libertarian Party's perspective. Every speech is protected speech, whether you insult Superman or you insult some religious leader, some flag, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just free speech. Blasphemy. Why do you even have that term? Free speech. That's it.
Yeah. The next day you come on the podcast, we will discuss, can free speech exist without right to own firearms very, very easily? This will be all for today. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ajay. Thanks, Tushar, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Niranjan. Thank you, guys. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Thank you, guys, for joining the live stream. See you soon.
যদি সবাই ফিরে যায় ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা সবাই ফিরে যায় যদি গহন পথে যাওয়ার কালে কেউ ফিরে না যায় তবে পথের কাটা তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে যদি আলো না ধরে ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা আলো না ধরে যদি ঝড় বাদলে আধার রাতে দুয়ার দেয় ঘরে তবে বজ্রানলে আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা জলরে আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা জলরে যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে তবে একলা চলো রে একলা চলো একলা চলো একলা চলো একলা চলো